cat was named Vagina.
Perversion is sick. It's degenerate and sick.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go. But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Want to know what you think? Want to know what you do? Oh, sorry. Hey, how are you? How's it going? How's it going, everybody? Sorry, I had a little song stuck in my head. Welcome, everybody.
Rich man, North Richmond.
Welcome
we're
to the Due Dissidents podcast. Tonight we'll call this show the Jew Dorks North of New York. How about that?
You know,
that's a fitting title for tonight's show.
I'll tell you a fun story. So I'm one of the few Jews from New York who actually likes country music. And when I first moved into Harlem 16 years ago, I had the backyard, and so I was, in the back of the building, same building I live in now, but different apartment. And I completely redid that yard. I dug it up and everything. And so, I'm not gonna lie, man. This is 16 years ago. It was the optics were a little fucked up. Like the white guy who just moved in, who has the backyard of the building. I mean, it was an illegal apartment. That's why I had the backyard. But everybody's watching through the window. I'm out in the backyard, I'm barbecuing and shit. And I didn't even think about it, man. But I was blasting my playlist, and it's a bunch of like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson. And fucking, I stopped and I was like, they're going to fucking kill me. I need to just stop. I need to put in headphones.
White boy moves in, claims the backyard, and blasts country music while barbecuing. You should have set up a little porch back there with a lawn chair and an American flag and the whole thing.
Banjo, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Like I didn't think about it, and then I'm out there, and you got a boy named Sue playing. I'm like, this probably is not helping my relationship with the neighbors. So I put in headphones. I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. If you want to last here, you better knock it off with the man in black there.
Yeah. Pushing your luck there. Pushing your luck. Indeed. Although Johnny Cash was quite progressive, actually. Johnny Cash was pretty woke.
Oh, he was. It's just like
the optics, yes.
The whole picture. Nah, man. People in the building who I got to know were like, yeah, when you first moved in, people were talking about jumping you, man.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's funny.
And I must say I brought that on myself.
Indeed. Well, glad it all worked out in the end. Glad you caught on quickly. 311 in the YouTube chat. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Big crowd. Please hit that like button to get some more people in here. Let's work that algorithm. Thank you to everybody filing in on Rumble. Our producer, Jake, is in the booth tonight, so give a nice round of applause to Jake Bowes. And we also have friend of the show. You all know who she is. Tusker will be joining us for the main segments tonight. So for the second half of the show, it will be a 3-person panel. So we have a great show in store for you guys this evening, and we thank you all very, very much for being here. I ate some pizza earlier, and I spilled a little sauce on my shirt, but it worked out because I think the microphone's blocking the stain, so nobody can see it. Yeah, so it worked out good. I had a feeling it would work out. So, guys, thank you very much for being here. Like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not yet subscribed. If you're over on Rumble, hit that follow button in the lower right-hand corner, and get ready. Get ready for a good one. We got a lot of stuff to get to tonight, but we first do want to just start by paying some mind to the horrible disaster in Maui.
What about the book?
In Hawaii. Oh yeah, we got to do the book too. Well, let's do this first because we do want to actually talk about this fire. This is now the deadliest wildfire in American history. The death toll just surpassed 100. It was at 89 a few hours ago. Then it went up to 93, and now it is past 100. And they are still actually looking for people. There are thousands of people yet to be found. So it's just a absolutely nightmarish situation. Russell, your wife was in Hawaii, a week and a half ago, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very strange. Like, it's a lot like the Mothman. Wherever she goes, a bridge collapses, or a fire breaks out, or a tsunami comes. I think she's actually the dark one.
So watch out, New York.
Watch out, New York. She's here now. She's leaving on Friday, so I would get out of here before then if you're in New York. Virtuoso, this might be a good time to visit relatives. So crews work to identify many of the 93 victims found so far in Maui wildfires, now the deadliest U.S. fire in over a century. So you can see a picture there. It just looks absolutely horrible. They've got cadaver dogs that they're going around with, and from another article I read, they've only covered 3% of the area. So that 93 figure is pretty much certain to go up, and probably go up by a lot. So the reason this was so bad was you had a terrible combination of winds whipped up from Hurricane Dora hundreds of miles offshore, and it was an unusually dry summer. So you had a lot of kindling to catch that fire, and then the wind just caught it and made it spread very quickly. So just some of the main points. Only 2 of the victims have been identified, and authorities expect the death toll to rise. Just 3% of the fire, as I was just saying, 3% of the fire zone had been searched with cadaver dogs. None of us really know the size of it yet, says the police chief. He urged those with missing family members to contact authorities to coordinate a DNA test to assist in the identification process. Estimates indicate the fires have displaced thousands of people. A total of 1,418 people are at emergency evacuation shelters, around 2,200 structures. Approximately 86% of them residential were destroyed or damaged in western Maui. Firefighters have made some progress in their battles against the 3 largest wildfires. The deadly fire in hard-hit Lahaina has not grown, but is still not fully under control. For a while, cell phones were knocked out. Cell phone service is gradually coming back. Also, after Maui was hit by a tsunami, I believe in 1960, they set up a series of warning sirens for disasters, and the warning sirens were not activated. So that's something that they're investigating. And the Attorney General will lead a comprehensive review of officials' response to the catastrophic wildfires, her office said Friday. My department is committed to understanding the decisions that were made before and during the wildfires, and to sharing with the public the results of this review. Now, on that, from another article I read, they only have 65 firefighters total to cover 3 islands. And by descriptions of how fast this fire spread, there's probably not very much that they could do. It's not clear why there weren't warning sirens, but even if there were, with a fire moving that fast, it's not clear it would have made very much of a difference.
Well, you had hurricane force winds, and then you have a drier than normal weather there. And so that just creates a perfect storm, and it's obviously just inescapable hell. I mean, what a desperate situation to have a fire like that on an island. You know, I mean, where is there to go? You had people swimming out in the water just to get shelter from the fire. So just an absolutely, you know, nightmarish situation. So we thought we should definitely just, you know, pay that some mind. Anybody who, you know, watches and listens to us from Hawaii, we hope you're safe and well, for sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, Russell, you got that book recommendation for us as we head into headlines?
I do. Okay, so if you know the stories we're covering, you can imagine why I pulled out something that if I know our most depraved audience on YouTube, a lot of you have probably read. This is White Trash. This was going around after Donald Trump got elected. There was a lot of hunger to try to understand the demographic that he represents to a lot of people. Hillbilly Elegy was also being read a lot around that time. This is the more scholarly, interesting, real deep dive into the demographic of poor whites, mostly descended from the indentured servants that were brought over, mostly Scotch-Irish indentured servants. And it gets into the history of that population in the South. It gets into some of what is very often talked about in terms of our racial politics, the way that indentured servant class has been here for as long as the slaves have been here, and very often worked side by side, and at various times in American history have tried to unite against the owner class, and the whites have generally been persuaded to accept being elevated above the blacks as a way of diffusing their class hatred, right? Well, at least you're better than them. You don't want to throw in your lot with them. So this book really gets into the whole 400-year history of those people and that relationship. It really gets into that as well. And it spends a lot of time talking about how the wealthy whites have always manipulated them into not really fighting for their common interests with non-white people.
Yeah, member chat from Ellen. Who wrote it? I forget who wrote that book. It's a woman wrote it, right?
Nancy Eisenberg.
Nancy Eisenberg. That's right. Because the other one, Dirty J, was Barbara Ehrenreich and Nancy Eisenberg.
I mean, one thing that will strike you reading that is how much the modern kind of MAGA narrative is exactly the narrative that the white aristocrats have always used against that class. Mm-hmm. All right, in order to dismiss their concerns and their poverty. They deserve it. This idea of this morally inferior, moonshine drinking, backwoods, sleeping with their cousins, all of these cliches and stereotypes, that scorn being heaped on them. It's not new. It's very old, but traditionally that is a view of the aristocracy, and it tells you a lot about who's defining liberalism today, that what they have to say about that movement and what drives it is so similar to what you would have seen the planter class saying about the poor whites in the 18th century.
Yeah, I interviewed a terrific writer named River Page, young guy, who has a great sense of humor. He's a super smart guy. I interviewed him back when this was just an audio show years and years ago, about an article he wrote that was largely inspired by that book, and it was a great interview. And maybe I'll actually publish
I think
it.
I know what article you're talking about.
Yeah, it's called "Liberals Always Hated Poor White Trash."
Yeah.
It made the rounds at the time. It went, it didn't go viral, but it made the rounds in our spaces. And he's a great writer. I would love to have him on the show again because he actually has a fantastic sense of humor as well. He wrote this other article about the vapidity of the liberal class, how their artistic sensibilities are just so mild and, based on nothing. He says, if you go into an affluent liberal's home, the walls will be white, but they won't call it white. They'll call it Chantilly lace or jasmine rice. You know, they'll have some other name for white that they'll call it. And that's how the piece opened. It was great. He's a great writer. He's very, very funny.
Well, and then you'll have the obligatory Monet or Degas print along
the
with
reprinted artwork.
Yes, along with the obligatory vintage ads. Just so twee with the ad for peaches from the 1920s or something. They'll have that hanging on the wall.
Exactly. Horribly uncomfortable furniture. Like the least comfortable couch you've ever sat on in your life should be like in a dentist's office waiting room. That's the couch they have in the apartment. Yeah.
Yes,
his name is River Page. He has a Substack. I don't know if he stopped his Substack and is writing somewhere else now, but I'll try to get in touch with him. He would be a great guest.
We got a PMC infiltrator. Someone just defined that type of white.
Oh, okay.
Get out of our chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. No, there's a whole. Okay, so that last theater article about the theaters going broke. I didn't see any of the theater people I knew sharing that around. Maybe that just depressed them too much. There is an article that just came out in the Washington Post that all the theater people are sharing around, where basically she said the administrators in the regional theaters have become like, a burden on the artists. Basically, they should just be putting money into the pockets of artists to create art instead of giving themselves enormous salaries and sucking all this money out of the system. Now, I joined this conversation and basically made the point, well, hey, it doesn't really matter if you give money to artists if the artists are all PMCs who are so out of touch with what's actually happening in the country that they're not going to create anything that anyone wants to see anyway. No one wants to have that conversation. Right. No one wants to talk about that. I mean, that is a big part of the problem. The whole arts have become, you look at, we were talking about this the other day. You look at Edward Hopper, that's relatable. People can look at that and relate to it. I mean, when you look at what the artists are producing now, who cares about it? But the libs will put it on their wall.
Yeah, right. Indeed. Robert Penner, member chat. I follow River Page, strong dissident voice and great writer. Excellent. Yes, he is for sure.
Get that cat on.
Indeed. Yeah, he was a great guest. I would love to have him on. He would have been great, actually. I wish I thought of that earlier. He'd have been great to talk about the Richmond, north of Richmond. By the way, folks, let me know in the chat if you can hear any background music. I adjusted the settings on my mic a little bit so that you wouldn't hear it. My neighbor, it's summertime. It's a beautiful night, so my neighbor's blasting music outside. I hope it's not disrupting the listening experience. I don't think it is because Russell can't hear it.
I just want you don't like my music. It's a good sport. It comes back here and in spite of not agreeing with a lot of what we say. We appreciate you, man.
And you had a very good question for Shama, too. You don't like
You did.
Yes.
I think he's warming up to us. I think he's starting to like us. I think we're winning him over.
Give it about an hour and a half till we do the Richmond, north of Richmond segment.
We don't have the time to get too into this, and I've said this before, but I just gotta say, I have never seen the left so unsympathetic to a strike because they see them as elitists. They see them like Billy Porter comes out and talks about how he's losing his home, and it's just Schadenfreude everywhere. Like, fuck you. How much is that house worth that you're selling now?
Right.
How many millions do you have? There's just no sympathy for that strike at all. I've never seen the left that unsympathetic to a labor action. And look, a lot of these people are broke. More of them are broke than not. I mean, more of them make less than $30,000 a year than not.
Exactly. All right, folks, we're going to start with some headlines before we get into our main segment. As promised, folks, we are going to pay some mind to Niger, as we should. So CNN reports that the acting U.S. Deputy, Secretary of State Victoria Nuland meets with military junta members in Niger. This was following, of course, the coup of the country's pro-Western government. So we will read a little bit from this article here. This is from the CNN piece. Acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland met with some of the members of the military junta in Niger on Monday, a significant diplomatic push to restore democratic rule in what has been a key U.S. partner nation. Nuland met with General Moussa Salah Barmou, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, the self-proclaimed chief of defense, and 3 colonies supporting him for more than 2 hours for, quote, extremely frank and at times quite difficult conversations, she said. Nuland is the highest level U.S. official to meet in person with the military putschists. I hope I'm saying that right, too. Her trip to the capital city of Niamey...
Fucking ugly American, man.
This is a hard one. This is a hard one. Made at the request of Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, comes less than 2 weeks after members of Niger's Presidential Guard seized power and a day after the deadline set by the Economic Community of West African States for the military junta to restore democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum to power or risk a military intervention. Nuland told reporters Monday that the U.S. kept open the door to continue talking and urged Barmou and his allies to hear our offer to try and work with them to solve this diplomatically, and return to constitutional order. Quote, I hope they will keep the door open to diplomacy. We made that proposal, Nuland said. Their ideas do not comport with the Constitution, and that would be difficult in terms of our relationship if that's the path they take. Yeah.
Well, that would be a first.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But we gave them a number of options to keep talking, and we hope they take us up on that. These sound like threats. This sounds very Putin-esque to me. I don't know. Is anybody getting Putin vibes from this? Sounds like we're getting ready to interfere, perhaps forcefully, perhaps violently, in the internal affairs of a sovereign nation. I thought we cared a lot about national sovereignty, although it was Victoria Nuland who helped coup the sovereign government of Ukraine 9 years ago, and now she's helped staving off a coup, which is backed by about 80% of the people of Niger. Right, fuck the EU, Nuland. Nuland noted that she was not granted a meeting with the self-proclaimed new leader of Niger, General, oh man, that's a hard one. I'm not even going to try that one.
Abdurrahmani Tiani.
Abdurrahmani Tiani. There you go. That's actually a nice name. So we were left to have to depend
now
on
I know
Mr.
what I'm
Barmou.
naming my fourth born.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we were left to have to depend on Mr. Barmou to make clear again what is at stake. The U.S. was pushing for a negotiated solution in Niger, Nuland explained. Again, it all sounds quite familiar, right? But, quote, it was not easy to get traction there because the putschists are quite firm in their view of how they want to proceed. Yeah, that's why they couped the government, because they were quite firm in how they wanted to proceed.
That takes a certain amount of conviction.
Takes some conviction, exactly. That's not like a first resort. That's kind of the last resort, right? Nuland said she was frank about what is at risk if they do not reverse course, and that she explained very clearly that the U.S.'s legal responsibilities if the military takeover is formally declared a coup, telling them that, quote, it is not our desire to go there, but they may push us to that point. One more slide. Nuland's request to see detained President Bazoum while in Niamey was denied, she told reporters Monday. So she was denied access to both the former coup president and the current president. She basically got told to go get her fucking shine box, right? We've talked to him on the phone, but we haven't seen him, she said. And so she goes on, we also asked for some gestures of health and welfare. He is in a very difficult situation under virtual house arrest, along with his son and his wife. I hope over the coming period, the people responsible for the current situation will come back to those requests, she added. She was able to meet with, quote, a broad cross-section of Nigerian civil society while in Niamey, she said. And this is my favorite quote. These are longtime friends of the United States. They are journalists. They are democratic advocates. They are human rights activists, she said. We had a frank exchange about the situation here.
Go home and get your fucking shine box.
Yeah, exactly. That's the treatment she was given. So I just want to repeat that. Journalists, democratic advocates, human rights activists. That's how she described the allies in Niger from the coup government that she's going to bat for, or at least trying to go to bat for, while she's over there. Here's a clip from Ron Paul's podcast called The Liberty Report. His co-host, Daniel McAdams, describes what sounds a little bit more like the real reason for her visit and the real reason we are so interested in reinstating the old guard.
Coup in Niger a few days ago, and you say, well, it's a country and most people can't find it on the map. That's true. They do provide an enormous amount of uranium. I think they supply 40% of France's uranium, and France.
Oh, she didn't say anything about uranium in that quote. I didn't hear anything in that article about uranium.
Yeah,
she left that out.
Should have mentioned that. They're concerned about their constitutional rights, but it's funny, you have those kinds of issues all over Africa, and you never really see them get involved unless there are resources at stake.
Yeah, that is a pattern. All right, uranium, that's one.
It's been a big influence in Niger. It's a francophone country. But the U.S. also has a long interest there. We have at least 1,000 troops, probably closer to 2,000 troops.
Oh, I didn't hear her mention any of that either.
No.
Close to 2,000 troops in Niger. Okay, uranium, troops. All right, that's got to be everything, right?
We've built several major drone bases there, so we fly drones from Niger
okay, so
all around the region searching for terrorists.
Drone bases searching for terrorists.
They continue to operate. We don't seem to be able to eradicate the terrorists, but it's a major interest for the U.S. So when there was a coup, and when we also trained their generals and their military officers. So when a coup came, and it was instigated by a group that included the leader who had been trained in the U.S. in special operations, well, the U.S. is starting to get concerned and starting to throw its weight around, literally and figuratively. And so what did they do? They sent in Victoria, blank the EU, Newland.
Now it makes a little more sense.
Yeah. And something Greenwald got into, the Wall Street Journal did an article. The general that she met with was our man in Niger. He had been trained by the U.S. He was, he was our puppet, or that's so we thought. So the Wall Street Journal did a whole article about how this was really the unkindest cut of all. He pulled a Saddam. He basically told them to go fuck themselves after taking a lot of American support. This was the guy, when they were in Niger, they would have dinner at his house when American officials were there. And he said, when the Wall Street Journal asked him, what they would do about, losing U.S. aid, he said, well, that's the price for our freedom. So, they gained their freedom from France in 1960, but they never really got their freedom. The French have been deeply involved in their country ever since.
They bombed them after the coup, which, again, that sounds like something Putin would do.
Yeah, sounds very Putin-esque.
Yeah, yeah.
They have a very large nuclear power industry in France. Like they need that uranium. I mean, it's about resources, and whenever it's about resources, just like Iraq, Kuwait, all this, they're gonna talk about human rights abuses. They're gonna talk about the Constitution. They're gonna talk about democratic rights. Now, there is a serious presence of Islamic insurgents in that region, and it's always difficult with these kinds of things. Like, I'm trying to get my news from non-U.S. sources. It's always hard to figure out what the non-propaganda is, but it seems like it is part of the reason they had this coup, was that the previous government was not able to contain terrorist attacks. And so they're turning to people they believe can better secure the country. Apparently, a lot of people are dying in these Islamic terrorist attacks, based on my research.
Well, yeah, shout out to Pasta and Fiorella Isabel for finding that Liberty Report clip, because that was very, very valuable, just to prove a sort of as a counter to the CNN article, which, you read American press about this. This is why you say you searched out
That's
these,
what's so
these sources,
difficult.
because you would never, you would never find any of that out. And that's obviously just such operative and relevant information. This is why I said at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, this is why when the libs talk about whataboutism, right, when you start saying, well, we can't go all out against Putin, we can't punish Putin in the way that we might want to punish Putin, because if you do that, then you have to ask, well, what price should we pay for the crimes that we have committed? What crimes should France pay for their crimes? And they say, well, that's whataboutism. That's ridiculous.
It's different when we do it.
It's not whataboutism at all. It's about what kind of world you want to live in. Do you want to live in a world where every state that commits atrocities against other states is punished accordingly? In that kind of world, this country does not exist in the way it exists now. You're talking about a completely different universe. And so that's why I tried to make that point then. And the point obviously remains now. So, you know, we will obviously, there's going to be more to that story, obviously, in the coming days and weeks. And we will do some follow-ups, obviously.
Our commitment to human rights and holding people accountable, it was always a load of shit. I mean, at the end of World War II, we brought over Nazis.
Right.
Our space program was built around Nazis. Werner von Braun was literally on the Wonderful World of Disney teaching kids about the atom. We've never cared about these things. Most of the war criminals in Japan were just joined the new upper class after the war. Very few of the war criminals in World War II were really held accountable. A few scapegoats. The ones who had useful skills, Russia got some of them and the West got some of them. It's always been something that we use as a weapon against unfriendly governments. The accusation of being human rights abusers. We've never actually cared about that, clearly, based on who we've always done business with.
Indeed. Indeed. Folks, let's take some super chats before we go on to headline number 2. This isn't a super chat. This just showed up during the countdown. Mika says, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes on the playlist. Yeah, I wish we could play copyrighted music. I wish YouTube allowed like because I would definitely pay like a licensing fee per month. Like if YouTube said, okay, for like $25 a month, you can play this amount of copyrighted songs. That would be a great feature because they have this big library and, you know, we'll chip in for it for copyright and everything. But that would be great because one of my favorite tracks, one of my favorite lines in any song ever is don't let the past remind us of what we are not now. Gives me chills when I hear that.
It's a lovely line.
Yeah.
There are a lot of video creation services where they've got a licensing library that's far more extensive than this YouTube crap, and that license is good for YouTube if you get it. But they're, you know, it's like $40 a month.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick Donahue. Thank you for the €10. Now AOC sold out to Big Sunscreen and Kyle's Kuklinski. I really needed Keaton's burn it all down in defense of the poor speech last week. Solidarity always, comrades. Was that my speech to Thomas Frank? I guess that was.
It
right?
must be, yeah.
Must be. I got a little hot with Shama, not at Shama, but when she told me that the DSA was giving her shit about, organizing a no vote, that was quite something. That took me a little bit by surprise. Keeper of tracking. Still glad Hillary lost. All right. Well, I'm happy for you. Glad you're happy. Thank you for the $2.
Listen, man. If I'm down, if I'm really sad, those Hillary voter compilations always perk me right up.
Yeah, indeed. That's feel good TV for sure. Ruthless criticism. Thanks for the $2. Newland is a follower of Putinist Assadism. Thank you for the donation, my friend. Dave Morrison, thank you for the $10. It's very kind of you. Not a fan of Billy Porter, but the media took his comments out of context and buried him in the lead. BP threw shade at the execs. What's BP? Are you talking about breaking points?
Billy Porter.
Oh, Billy Porter. Right, duh. Threw shade at the execs, and I don't have to tell you about how the media blatantly misleads. I didn't follow that at all.
Yeah, I have no comment. Okay, I mean, Billy Porter actually is a good example of why people are so unsympathetic to this strike. I don't have any particular feelings or opinions about Billy Porter. I could probably share a cab with him and not realize who he was. Like I don't have strong opinions about him. But I have seen some of the clips that the people who are taking pleasure in his need to sell his house are showing. And, you know, he got into the culture war stuff, as many Hollywood people do. And that's really my point. You know, you want to go up there and scream about how drag shows for kids aren't killing kids, it's guns. Okay, man. Don't be surprised when at least half the country takes pleasure in you losing your house. You know, the Hollywood celebrities used to stay away from this kind of shit mostly, with some exceptions. That's why when Marlon Brando refused his Academy Award over treatment of Native Americans, it was earth-shattering. Because so not only was he turning down an Academy Award, but celebrities didn't really talk about things like that. They didn't get into these kinds of things. And now you've got at least half the country, if not more, feels like this is a cultural elite that looks down on most of the country and its views. So I'm not taking a position on good for Billy Porter. I don't really care. But that's a big part of why people are so unsympathetic to this strike.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about what he said. Taddy Mason, thank you for the Rumble rant. Thank you to our Rumble viewers, by the way. Jake in the producer booth is catching Rumble rants, so if you would like to help support the show over on Rumble in the form of these Rumble rants, they're very helpful. Jake, thanks for catching them, and Taddy Mason, thank you for the donation. People who feel entitled to be in charge of and have control over other people often start negotiations with threats of reprisal. Yes, if you don't immediately give them everything they want. Yeah, I mean, if you look at those quotes that she gave to the press, and that's just that's the version of it that she told to the press. It sounded like a mob boss going over there. Hey, we would hate to take things this far, but we might have to. It's in the rule book
Gaddafi
here, right?
down the road, he had a fucking country, right?
Yeah, he had a
now
fucking
they got
attitude
slave
problem,
markets.
Too. Yeah, he had a fucking attitude too. He
got a bad attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a little saber enema there at the end.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks, we will get back to some super chats in a little while. Thank you very much. Those are super helpful. Let's check in on our great friend Robert F. Kennedy Jr., shall we? This piece of video is from Fox Carolina. It's an interview with RFK Jr.
What I love about RFK segments is exactly what he's going to say because he's so consistent.
Right. Well, you have a good idea of what he's going to say because he's going to talk about something that he said before, and then he's going to say he didn't really say it, or if he did say it, he didn't mean it, it was a mistake, and he has
taken out of context,
taken out of context. Right. Exactly. So, this video is from Fox Carolina. Now, this is an interview that RFK Jr. did a couple of weeks ago in the great, beautiful city of Charleston, South Carolina. And it just surfaced on Twitter yesterday, to my knowledge. I just saw it for the first time. It was just posted there to an account that I follow. But here's RFK talking police reform and qualified immunity because, you have to imagine that with Biden poised to really dominate the black vote in South Carolina during the primary, RFK is going to try to appeal to more of the white voters, who lean more conservative, obviously, in South Carolina, even the Democrats. They don't like this talk of police reform and qualified immunity. So here's the answer he gave about qualified immunity for police officers.
You said you want to remove qualified immunity and transform the police. What does that look like for you to transform the police?
Yeah, I don't, if it says on my website that we're going to remove qualified immunity, that's wrong.
On your website it says transform the police. In an interview, you said you wanted to remove.
Yeah, I don't, that is an error.
Yeah, that's when I thought that my constituency was the progressives. Now that I realize the constituency is the conservative Democrats, forget what I said. I mean the other thing. Or actually, I'm not for any of that.
I do not want to. I don't think it's feasible to remove qualified immunity.
Okay.
Oh.
I think the police are having a hard enough time hiring people right now.
That's true.
And that a lot of interactions that the police have nothing to do with civil rights or race, and we can't put individual police officers in a position where anybody who has an interaction with them can then sue them.
Okay, so you understand that, I believe it's 75 to 80% of voters in the South Carolina Democratic primary are black voters, since a vast majority of whites in South Carolina are Republicans who vote in the Republican primary. So to go down to South Carolina and say on their local TV, in Charleston, a very, fairly large city for that state at least, largely black city, I don't think a lot of interactions with the police have much to do with race. And so, I don't really think it's a good idea to be too hard on the cops because they're having a little trouble. But let's hear him. Sorry, did you have anything?
Well, this goes back to what we've been saying. He is not some radical anti-establishment lefty candidate. He is a conventional Democrat circa 1970. That's all this guy is.
Right, with a couple of issues that he bucks the party line on, which is why he appeared as this bright, shiny object. And I called this from the very beginning. I told all of you guys, including the RFK stands who have, good on you. Thank you for hearing us out and sticking with us. I'm not trying to beat up on you, but I got to tell you, I told you, he looks good now. The more you check under the hood with this guy, the less you're going to like what you see. That's what I said at the very beginning. All right, so here we go.
And the hits just keep on coming.
The hits just keep on coming, indeed.
Individually. And
so you don't have any plans in place to remove qualified immunity?
No, I'm not going to remove qualified immunity, but I'm going to use the Justice Department to address any abuse of the use, particularly of deadly force, in interactions between Black Americans and police or anybody else. So, and I think that that's a civil rights issue that has to be addressed, and I'm going to address it aggressively.
Another major issue.
Okay, so look, there's a few things about this. Number one, qualified immunity, like ending qualified immunity, that's like the cop-out answer that like shit-lib candidates and shit-lib politicians go to when they're pressured on police reform. Like that's like the least you can do. Also, when you're talking about qualified immunity, you're talking about civil suits against the cop. So in the case where a cop commits a crime, qualified immunity wouldn't really weigh on that at all because they'd be charged with a crime. Qualified immunity is like, for example, my brother-in-law once was pulled over, and for absolutely no reason, the cop made him sit with his hand on the wheel for like 20 minutes straight until backup showed up. He scared the hell out of him for nothing. I mean, I don't know what the hell was wrong. They never even told him what he did, anything like that. He wasn't speeding to his knowledge. Maybe he had a taillight. I forget what it ended up happening. But he starts having kind of an emotional breakdown for no reason, because he doesn't know they're calling backup. Why are they calling backup? Right. Why do I have to keep my hands on the wheel? Like, in that case, you should be able to file a civil suit against the cop. That's what qualified immunity would really affect, more than like a criminal case where the cop would be charged criminally anyway. But the bottom line is, qualified immunity is the least of what we could expect from any anti-establishment candidate vis-a-vis police reform. And he's backtracking on that. And when I say backtracking, of course, what I'm talking about is the fact that he did say to the black press, oddly enough, the underdog presidential candidate and his pledge to Black America. In a one-on-one interview with the Black Press of America, Kennedy spoke about his relentless focus on combating environmental racism, ending qualified immunity for law enforcement officers, and addressing the alarming racial disparities within the American medical system. So he told the black press that he was going to do it. He tells now the white press in South Carolina that he's not going to do it. You said, Russell, a while ago, I mean, you say this a lot, people are patterns. Where you see someone behave one way one time, that's likely indicative of how they will behave in the future multiple times over and over and over again. It's now a pattern, a well-established pattern, or RFK will say something and then pretend he didn't say it, or pretend he didn't mean it, or pretend he forgot that he said it and now he has to go back and correct it. He tends to make a lot of this stuff up as he goes along, and this is another example.
Yeah, I would hope, and a lot of them have come around. I've seen after the Israel thing, I saw a lot of the RFK stands say, "I'm out." I think it's less and less tenable to sustain the argument. Well, he's off on this or that, but I really like his position on this. This guy is just full of shit. He's been full of shit from the beginning. We said, and look, we had really open minds. I know I did. When I started reading his book at first, because a lot of what he was talking about with the virus of unknown origin checked out, I was like, yeah, man, hey, this is something. Let's, I was ready to really, not necessarily support the campaign, but definitely be sympathetic to it. And the more I read, the more I realized, oh, all right. So this guy he's a liar, basically. There's some truth here, there's some lies here, there's some crazy here. And unless you're going to sit there and pick apart everything he says, or you're very familiar with the subject, you don't know which is which. You don't need a guy like that. What do you need somebody like that for? The whole point is, if you're supposed to be an expert, I'm supposed to be able to rely on you to tell me the truth. And it's not just being wrong. Anybody can be misinformed or make a mistake. It's the incomplete information. It was what the intentional omissions, misleading statements of fact. I said, oh, this guy's full of shit. He's a bullshit artist. And all of this is consistent with that. He's a bullshit artist. He tells the black press, yeah, I'm for this. He tells the white press, yeah, I'm for that. I mean, come on, man. Anyone who's still holding on to this guy, I just don't get it. I understand the hurt and pain that's out there about how the government handled COVID. And that's valid, but this is not your avatar. This is not your standard bearer. There are other people who are good on that subject.
All right. Headline number 3 coming up in just a moment, but we have 829 people in the chat, and we have yet to do a certain thing. Russell, get your neck ready.
Oh, snap!
Missed it.
You caught me by surprise.
All right, I'm going to give it a few seconds.
All
I'll
right.
give it one more time.
Come on.
A few seconds. All right, here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I totally zoned out. We hit that a long time ago. Actually.
We hit a long time ago. Apparently, we got the crowd filing out from Sabby coming into our show. Sabby was on at 5 tonight, and we're on at 7. Oh yes, by the way, now that we have everybody here, we have to announce. I don't think we ever announced this. Maybe we did. Wednesday, Russell had a night gig, which worked out well for me. Because I was not going to be able to do a show Wednesday night anyway, because it is my beautiful wife Amanda's birthday on Wednesday. So we are not going to be doing a show this Wednesday night. We will be doing a show Tuesday night. So this Tuesday, we will be on at 8 p.m. Eastern. So program note, no show Wednesday. We'll be on again Tuesday. So we'll be on again in 48 hours. And we will be on the Post-Duopoly show tomorrow. I believe that's an 8 p.m. start time. I have to double check, but I'm almost positive. I will post it on the Twitter once I know that for sure. But 3 Due Dissidents appearances in a row tonight, tomorrow on Post-Duopoly with RBN and Hardlands, and then again back here on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. So a little program note. Mark your calendars down, folks. Philosophical Thirst Worms, thanks for the $10. How long until we start seeing the CIA-sponsored articles about babies taken out of incubators and Viagra squads? Yeah, like they always claim.
Exactly.
For every one of these Nigerians. Yeah, exactly. Good point. We will see. We will see. Obviously, we're in the early days of this. I suspect this will be an ongoing story, since it is not like the U.S. empire to let things slip that easily.
No, it's not.
Dave Dillerai, thanks for the $8. Sorry, but yeah, you remember that? That was a faux pas I made a while ago. Sweet bluey Jew eyes. What did I say? I said something else. It was sweet bluey Jew eyes or something like that. Yeah, something Jew eyes. I said that the other.
Now that's the cover that we're meant to do.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Fancy Pants, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that very much. Joyce asks if there's a sunscreen lobby. I don't know. We will find out. That'd be worth looking into. Be worth looking into for sure. Indeed. Thank you for the $10. Sharinoliawa. Hope I got that right. Thank you for the $9.99. That's very generous.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you very much for the super chats. They are very, very helpful. We appreciate that. Very, very much. So we thank you for keeping those coming. Final headline of the night before we get into some main stories here. Tucker Carlson interviewed former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund about how he was largely kept in the dark about security risks prior to the fateful day of January 6, 2021. This was Tucker's second interview with Sund that just aired on Twitter yesterday. The first interview was recorded for Fox News, but was never released. So before we start playing an excerpt from the interview, we actually have 2 short pieces that we will play. At this point, I think it's pretty obvious that he was shit-canned over this. right? Over the January 6th coverage and over the fact that he is interviewing an authoritative source of information and perspective about January 6th. This is the Capitol Police chief. This is not some journalist. This is not some guy who claims to know things. This is the guy who is in a spot to know what was going on and how and why. And he interviewed him. That interview was canned. He recorded that interview for Fox, so that was their property. He couldn't take it with him once they shit-canned him. So he, rather than talk about it or write about it, he just called him back and say, hey, let's just reshoot it. And that's exactly what they did. And so we've talked a lot about feds in the crowd on January 6th. And so they talk about a little bit of that in the interview. But some of the newer stuff has to do with the fact that this guy, chief of Capitol Police, was kept largely in the dark about what was going on that day and in the run-up to that day. So here's Stephen Sund on the Tucker on Twitter show.
January 5th, the day before the attack at 1 p.m., I think it's 1 or noon, I had a conference call with the leaders of all the law enforcement, Conti from Metropolitan Police Department, Steve D'Antuono, the director of the Washington Field Office for the FBI. Nobody from DHS was on. I hadn't thought about that, but all the law enforcement that was down there. I had the Military District of Washington, General Omar Jones, on the phone with me. I had the head of the National Guard, General William Walker, on the call. It was a call I coordinated. Not one person on that call talked about any concerns for the intelligence, the attack on the Capitol, the threats to officers that we were seeing that was out there. That's what's scary.
But to be clear, do we now know for a fact that the people on that call knew about those threats and didn't mention them to you?
So this is what we know for a fact, and I'll tell you, I'm not the only chief that was in the dark. You look at Robert Conti, head of the largest police department in Washington, D.C. He also said the same thing. He wasn't getting the same notifications like the Norfolk memo that came out the day before. He didn't get it. So Steve D'Antuono, who's the Washington Field Office FBI director, you look at the GAO report that came out February of this year. It talks about multiple emails. Is the GAO report, or it's a Senate report that just came out in July, just last month. Talks about multiple emails going to Steve D'Antuono on Sunday, Monday, and some probably Tuesday, just the days before, talking about the violence that they're predicting coming up to the Capitol. And I have a video call with him on that Tuesday, and nothing said about it. I mean,
he didn't mention it.
Not a word, not a word.
So,
I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing that you would not alert the chief of Capitol Police to any of that, right? And
I don't see any explanation, and I would recommend people watch this entire thing. It was 55 minutes, I think, right? I would recommend watching it because what you really come away with is this guy, who knows what his personal politics are. I mean, most people in law enforcement lean conservative, but he's clearly a professional doing his job. This is not ideological. It's not partisan. He doesn't strike me as a guy who probably particularly likes Donald Trump either. But how do you explain all of the things that he describes here without it being a conspiracy? I'm sorry. I mean, what other explanation is there that you would not share this information, this intelligence that they're expecting an attack with the head of the Capitol Police?
Well, this is like, whether you're talking about this or something like 9/11, a conspiracy doesn't necessarily mean it was a hands-on plot. It means that there were obstacles cleared, right? So like if you alert the Capitol Police to what's going on, they could do something to control it or something to stop it or something to maybe contact. If there were feds in the crowd who were going to instigate, they would know who they are. And so they would know if they did escalate,
that's a conspiracy.
There would be a record. Right. It's a conspiracy of sorts, right? It's not the same.
Well, no, this isn't of sorts. This isn't like when we get into, hey, the whole Davos agenda. They probably don't need to meet in a cave.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you have a situation where, Condoleezza Rice gets a memo 6 weeks before 9/11 saying, bin Laden determined to attack, right? That's not to say she coordinates the attack. It's to say she ignores it, right?
Right.
We look the other way, right?
Sure.
So that's what I mean, right? And so, yeah, that looks like exactly what happened here. What other explanation is there not to alert the chief of Capitol Police to what is going on? And one other point that I do want to make, because whether this guy's a conservative or let's say he's a diehard MAGA supporter, let's just say he is, right? At the time January 6th was going down, most Trump supporters thought it was disastrous for their cause. Most Trump supporters did not like what they were seeing on January 6th. Roger Stone is on camera in a hotel room because somebody was filming him for some documentary or something. And he's on camera saying, this is not good for the movement. This is fucking terrible. This should not have happened. That fucking idiot pointed at the Capitol. You know what I mean? Like, so even the diehard in the tank MAGA, just ultra MAGA Trump supporters were not happy with the way it was going down that day. So even if this guy is a Trump supporter, the idea that he wanted it to go down that way or that he's somehow trying to spin it it just doesn't really hold water. I think you have to assume he's telling the truth. He is the guy in a position to know. All right, let's keep going.
Not to repeat myself, but that just does not make sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't, especially when you think about this, the military, the United States military. And this gets really convoluted once you get into the response on January 6th and how I was delayed getting resources. You have the United States military, Secretary of Defense or Acting Secretary of Defense Miller and General Milley had both discussed locking down the city of Washington, D.C. because they were so worried about violence at the Capitol on January 6th. On Sunday and Monday, they had been discussing locking down the city, revoking permits on Capitol Hill because of the concern for violence. You know who issues the permits on Capitol Hills for demonstrations? I do. You know who wasn't told? Me. Instead, on January 4th,
there's another thing
Miller do? He puts out a memo restricting the National Guard from carrying the various weapons, any civil disobedience equipment that would be utilized for the very demonstrations or violence that he sees coming. It just doesn't make any sense.
Wait. So the military says we're so concerned about potential imminent violence that we are considering shutting down the city. But at the very same time, they decide that the National Guard can't adopt an aggressive posture to protect the city.
They're deploying because they're going to be deploying National Guard to assist Washington, D.C. with crowd control at metros and some of the traffic control areas. But they put this out on January 4th, specific to January 5th and 6th. And this direction affected the National Guard in Virginia and Maryland. When I was begging for assistance on January 6th, they weren't allowed to respond at first. You look at Governor Hogan. He did a press conference saying he was begging to respond, and he was being denied by the Pentagon, all because of the memo.
All right, and that's not all of it. There's another minute that we're going to play there too, but if you just look at, he was not put in touch about permitting. He was not put in touch about the security risks in advance of this. There was no immediate coordination with the National Guard. Once again, I just want to say, and we can make this point again after, because as someone who has dabbled in what people have called conspiracy theories for a while, it's important because they try to smear you as thinking that it was all centrally orchestrated, and that's not what it means. What it means is that, look, there really was a mob that attacked the Capitol, right? To what extent you can call it a planned insurrection, I still think that's a little clear because they clearly did not have any means to actually interrupt the transfer of power. They had no means to do that. There was no way they were going to be able to do that. And it seems more and more like it was a spontaneous rally that, as Tucker has said, got out of hands in large part due to some agent provocateurs, it seems like, right? So it doesn't mean there was no mob or that there was no attack. What it means is that these people who are telling you they did everything they could to stop it didn't do everything they could to stop it because they knew they could use it for their ends. That's what it means.
Well, that's it.
So it's not denying the event, right? It's not saying this didn't happen. Because, some people go down real rabbit holes, right? But it's saying that it's not what it seems. It's not what it seems because the people who are acting so horrified about this, the more you learn, the more you say, wait a minute, if you're so horrified about this, why did it take you 71 minutes to get the National Guard to respond to the situation, as we'll see in this second clip?
I feel after watching all of it, looking at everything at play here, I do feel this was coordinated. I do feel that this was a conspiracy. I feel that they in advance decided that they wanted to gin up this crowd and make sure that they did things that would be prosecutable, that they could use to generate a narrative against Trump and his movement. Because if you look at all of these things, it's not feasible to me. And we are, as anybody who watches the show knows, we're inclined not to go to the conspiracy theory explanation, which Keaton, I gather from what you're saying, feels that it was this individual's decision and this individual. Nah, I don't think so. It's too much.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
I think there had to be some coordination here, because you're.
Well, yeah, just like there was coordination in the Newberg Sting case. That's why I said as soon as I was watching it, I thought, okay, this was provoked. This was being egged on in some way. Right.
It's being egged on, and I think also somebody had to have talked to somebody for all of these agencies to make sure not to communicate with the person who clearly was not in on it about what they were planning on doing. The fact that so many people broke protocol, I don't see how you explain that without a guiding plan.
Well, let's go to
this. It looks like a plot.
Let's go to this second clip.
So you make this call immediately to the House Sergeant at Arms who reports Mr. Irving, who reports to Nancy Pelosi. He says, I'll call Pelosi.
He says, I'm running up the chain.
Running up the chain, but that is the chain.
I hear you. I got you. I want to tell you exactly what he said.
So what happens then? Does he get back to you?
So over the next 71 minutes, I make the 32 calls to a number of agencies. 11 of those calls are follow-up calls. And look in the Senate combined report from 2001. They have a great infographic of the call after call after call after call. 11 times I call in the next 71 minutes going, where are we on the approval? Where are we on the approval? Just any minute now. Any minute. I'm going to get any minute. Finally at 2:09, 71 minutes later, 2:09, I'm finally given approval. Think about that. 71 minutes later, I immediately call Mike Stinger, say we've got approval. I was so pissed off, I made sure that
pause
watch
this,
command,
because I feel like this needs a little context. Okay, so to be clear, they passed a law that approval had to be given from the Sergeant at Arms in order for him to go in order for him to act. Now, the Sergeant of Arms answers to Congress, which means he answers to Nancy Pelosi. So they told him they're going to go up the chain, which under the law, he did not have to do. The Sergeant of Arms could have just given him permission in an emergency. But he tells him he's going to go up the chain, which means to Pelosi. So what he's saying here is it took 71 minutes for, theoretically, Nancy Pelosi to sign off on giving him help. And he talks at another point in the interview about how when they were putting together the January 6th committee, he was not brought in to testify, even though he wanted to. And they said right up front that Pelosi was off limits. So there are no phone records. There are no emails telling you what Nancy Pelosi was doing in that 71 minutes. And he also talks at one point, clearly very angry about it, about how Pelosi went on the next day playing up her shock and horror at what had happened, when meanwhile, according to him, she's the reason it took them 71 minutes to respond.
Well, you don't know necessarily the reason why it's suspicious that they would say we have to go up the chain of command when they don't have to is because you didn't know in that situation if you were going to be able to reach Nancy Pelosi. How do you know she's going to be reachable in that moment? You don't know where she is. You don't know whether she's hunkering down somewhere. Like, how do you know you can even get in touch with her? How do we know they did get in touch with her, right? We don't know that, right? We don't know that they, we're not saying they called her and she said, no, hold off, right? They may not have been able to reach her, right? I mean, how could you assume you're going to be able to reach her in a chaotic situation like that? So why wouldn't you just call in the National Guard anyway, right?
That's my watch commander. I said, John, mark the time as 2:10. I finally got approval for the National Guard. I was that mad.
71 minutes later. So, yeah, there you have it. There you have it. And I think there's very little doubt in my mind that that's why he was let go of Fox News, because he was, looking too deep into that, looking too hard into that, right? And that was definitely something. Look, they couldn't just have the Trump era end so benignly, right? Because they've been saying for all these years what a threat to democracy he is, how he's undermining the country and that he'll never leave power. He'll never just agree to go quietly. And so that was a big spectacle. It was a big show.
Her cat was named Vagina.
And it struck me as that while it was going on because of the Newburgh 4 case, which we covered a couple weeks ago on this show. I know, how the FBI and the deep state works to manufacture these narratives, and they can make something they can make you look so guilty. They can make you look so guilty, and the truth can be something else. And now you have, a mentally ill, paranoid, schizophrenic, sentenced to 5 years in jail. Thankfully, he was let out early. Based on this thing, which was it was a setup, just like the Newburgh's thing was a setup.
Right. I mean, these people did choose to do that, but if you look at why isn't Ray Epps in jail? It doesn't make any sense. How could he not have been working for the government when you got the QAnon shaman, a schizophrenic, in jail? This guy, where you have multiple videos of him saying we got to go in, he's not in jail.
Notice
what other explanation is there?
He's the liberals' favorite January 6th protester. The guy who's on camera saying, go, let's go, let's go.
Right.
He's the one they love because now he's suing, right?
Right. And that shows you how knee-jerk their reactions to everything is, which, we'll get into with the song a little later. I mean, it's just, therefore, we're against it.
Right. All right. Philosophical Thirst Worms. Thank you for the $5. I'm not supporting the writer's strike until America gets a handwritten apology for everything they did to Star Trek and Star Wars.
I'm with you, my brother. I am with you. Agreed.
Last year, NYPD misconduct lawsuits cost us over $121 million. So what are you saying? You are for qualified immunity? I mean, that's a small price to pay, I think. What is the NYPD budget? Yeah, NARC, Fed, Robert Bennett, Fed.
That's why he shows up every time.
Right, exactly. That's why you're at those protests,
event,
right?
He's watching us for the deep state.
Right. He's a flip-flopping Zionist, Poindexter, but the unmentionable thing is important. Cornel West doesn't have the guts for the reckoning I want over it. Well, I mean, that's up to you, my friend. Like I said, that is your decision to make based on your priorities there.
I'm just glad that we don't like RFK because they'd be smearing us as sexist with our Marianne coverage otherwise. We can't really say that. We're not any nicer to RFK. If anything, we're probably
a little
harder on him.
Yeah. I would say so. So. Cool Blue, happy birthday to Keaton's wife on Wednesday. That's also my birthday. Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate that. The question is, why would they want this to happen? Go to such great lengths? Well, because they needed to. First of all, make good on their hypothesis that Trump was this existential threat to the democratic norms. That's number one. And number two, they thought that this would really delegitimize his entire movement and make it impossible for him to run again. And it doesn't look like they were right about that, but we'll see how the trial goes, right? I mean, they could make it a lot harder for him, for sure. We'll have to see how that goes.
The Georgia indictments, it looks like, are coming down next week.
That's true. And there's the Georgia indictments as well. Yeah. Big crowd over on Rumble. Thank you very much for being here, folks. We appreciate that. Snork Y2K, thanks for the $2. Also, not one person crapped on Pelosi's chair. Yeah, I don't think he crapped on her chair. Not yet. I think he sat in her chair. Folks, we'll get to some more Super Chats in a little while, but we want to first, very importantly, plug patreon.com/do dissidents. That is the best way to support this program. If you appreciate what we do, go over to Patreon and throw a few bucks in our Patreon pool. We know a lot of people give us multiple Super Chats per show. If you give us 4 Super Chats per show, make it 3 per show and pour some of that money into the Patreons. This way it doesn't cost you any extra money, but it just makes this show a little bit more censor-proof, a little bit less reliant on these big tech platforms. We are over there on Rumble, so we ask for you to please go and follow us over there on Rumble. That's very important. You can hit the follow button in the lower right-hand corner if you're over there on Rumble. One of the things we are going to be announcing very, very soon, probably on Tuesday, is a fundraising / Patreon drive in order to fund some on-the-ground 2024 election coverage for both the primaries and hopefully the general election as well. But at the very least, we want to get our boots on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire. We'll probably send Russell to Iowa, and I'll go to New Hampshire since I'm fairly close to New Hampshire up here in northern New York. And that'll be a lot of fun. But part of that drive...
We're gonna rent a red convertible and get a tank of nitrous.
Exactly. Part of
this
that
is
drive,
bat country.
Yeah, right. Part of that goal is to get to 500 Patreon subscribers. So we will need 500 Patreon or Substack subscribers. Right now we are at, by this counting, about 272. So we need to add a couple hundred more by the end of the year. Additionally, when we get to 500 paid subscribers through Patreon and or Substack, we will be adding a 4th stream per week. That 4th stream per week will air exclusively on Rumble, Rockfin, and Twitter. We will do an uncensored stream once a week. We're looking at doing those on Tuesday mornings from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So it'll be a 1-hour show that we can do some uncensored content, stuff that we couldn't get away with doing here on the main YouTube channel. That's what we're looking at. So if you can go over and help us out, patreon.com/DoDissidents. It's really, really helpful, and that will fund a 4th weekly stream. So we hope that you guys can all chip in there if you are, yes, the gates of hell, as Russell likes to brand it there. So if you can go over there and throw a few bucks in our patron jar every month, that really is the backbone of the show. You get your name up in lights here. You get call-in access to these regularly scheduled live streams, and you also get 2 exclusive supporter streams per month. Those are private unlisted streams over on Rumble as well. So thank you guys very much for your support. You can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. That really helps a great deal.
Tuesday, we will launch our GoFundMe.
Yes, we have the GoFundMe.
Send us on the ground. Here's your chance.
Exactly. So you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. If you go to our Substack and you become a paid member, that gets you the same perks as Patreon. If you go there and you sign up for free, that's still super helpful. It helps you keep in touch with us. You get notifications whenever we're about to go live. We'll send out a little newsletter blast. You also get audio versions of these live streams, which you can listen to in podcast form. So there are perks to signing up for free at Substack. And most importantly, it just gives you a way to keep in touch with us in case we are ever victimized by some of this censorship here. It gives us a way to get in touch with you saying, hey, today's stream is going to be here and not here and whatever, right? So that's super important and super helpful. Thank you all guys very much for your support. It is appreciated very, very much. DC, thanks for the $5. Weird how nobody ever mentions the fact that the Force the Vote M4A rally January 3rd, 2021 had law enforcement outnumbering demonstrators by a much wider margin. Is that true? I didn't know that about that rally. But that's another thing, that's the other thing that was always weird about January 6th is you knew there was a strong possibility because of where it was and what it was about that the crowd was going to get out of control. So if you were really serious about stopping it, you don't think you could have stopped it? I mean, there were photos, that people were circulating in the days after of the Capitol Police policing the George Floyd protests, which were in the same place, and how they made sure nobody got into those buildings during those George Floyd protests. Right. So you're telling me they couldn't do crowd control if they wanted to?
Of course, they know how to do this. It was a setup. Obviously, you had, we said this from the beginning. This is not the first riotous, potentially violent protests in fucking Washington, D.C. They had that every other day in the 60s. Nobody ever got into the Capitol. It's not like you had a bunch of people show up with assault rifles or something. No, these were just a bunch of yokels. Really? We didn't have the resources to keep them out of the Capitol? It's absurd.
Right, to control the
If
crowd.
they didn't want them in there, they would never have gotten in there.
Right. Huck Follywood says, Underhill, thank you for the $2.
This is what I'm saying, man. This is what I'm saying. It's like the one labor strike that people don't want to get behind. And I do honestly, I mean, somebody made a joke, but I do feel like it is partly because they've spent like the last 10 years destroying people's childhoods.
What's that?
They've spent the last 10 years destroying people's childhoods and like ruining brands.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
they've just taken all of these very beloved properties like Star Trek and Marvel and DC and Star Wars and just absolutely driven them into the ground. I think that is part of it. Not all of it, but it's part of it.
Could be. Robert Penner, thank you for the clarification. NYP wastes a lot of money and abuses its power. Not that difficult a point to grasp. All right, so you're not saying you're for qualified immunity. You're saying that it indicates the abuses of the cops that they paid out that much. Okay, point taken. I think I take that point. I think I get what you're saying there. But thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, folks. We are going to start our main segments in just a few moments here, but first we just want to play a little footage from the Humanity for Peace rally, which Russell shot and edited together. He had some fun with the crowd, interviewed some of the speakers there. So he put together this little piece of footage, which includes my dad at the beginning and the end, who was set up with an umbrella full of buttons that he was giving out. So he appears at the beginning and the end, so you could put a face to a voice or a name if you'd like. And then we will be back in about 4 minutes, so we hope you enjoy this. This is from the Humanity for Peace rally last Sunday, August 6th.
Find out that Mr. Weiss is... We're a little disappointed to find out that Mr. Weiss is with the Big Button Cartel here.
Maxim Gorky is completely vindicated. You need to look into Maxim Gorky, and the Popular Front is on the rise. Thank you.
Do you have a preference for president, if you don't mind my asking?
Honestly, I mean, I have criticisms of everybody running for president. Like, RFK seemed pretty good, but then he went, like, super pro-Israel.
Who did?
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Right.
Yeah, he seemed good at first, but then he just went hardcore Zionist and very much not about that.
So you think Kennedy's going all the way?
Yes.
Yeah?
Your vote is your own. That's what Ralph Nader said.
That's right. Your vote is your own. You know who I voted for last time? Dave Chappelle.
Ah, very good. Against war, we're against fascism and against nuclear proliferation.
I think that Donald Trump himself is in essence a communist. I think that the MAGA movement is in itself a communist pre-party formation.
You were going to be here, I thought she was going to fucking cry. No, I mean, she was really like, she's sitting in the, Nancy doesn't get pissed, and she doesn't say when she's pissed. This is Mike Termott. I'm a candidate for the Libertarian Party presidential nomination down here at Hague Plaza.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing the petitioning to get Diane Sayre on the ballot the last time to run for Senate.
She's running now, right?
She's running against Gillibrand and previous against Schumer.
I'm a puppeteer. I've been to the Washington thing. So I usually perform for kids, but I've done a lot of political stuff. So I have a question for you. Let's say your program wanted a puppet of a politician. Who would I make? And it can be something negative, somebody you actually like, because there's so much
Somebody
negative.
we like?
Yeah. So
Dave
if we,
Chappelle. All right, honest answer. Who had the best uniforms in World War II? The Nazis
the
or
Soviet
the Soviets?
Union. The Soviets?
Soviets?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, come on. Those
You can't
leather
trip me up
trench
on
coats?
those. You can't
No.
trip me up on that. They look stylish, but you know, we've got to back our Soviets.
Thank you for putting on this rally. And again, if you believe in RFK Jr., do what you can to support him, because they don't want him. They want war.
If you are a classical liberal, if you believe in being able to live your life by your own standards, the Democratic Party has left you behind. But we are still there as libertarians.
Did you get one of the signs? You're welcome to take one as long as you'll use it.
That is Mad Crab. There he is. We have uncovered the crab.
Live. This is a worldwide effort. It's not just centered here in New York City, not just centered around the people who are gathered around me right now. It is the entire world crying out that today we have focused our efforts into one guided laser to tell the world peace, not war and not violence.
What about homeless people who have no money to pay for insurance?
I am not opposed to a bottom line social safety net. That is completely acceptable to me. I do believe that as the United States government gets out of the entitlement business, the private sector will be stepping up and providing a social safety net that would benefit folks at a fairly wide range of the socioeconomic spectrum.
You know, I grew up in the heavy metal era.
Yeah.
And when Rob Halford from Judas Priest came out, I was like, how were we all so shocked? The man was literally singing Hell Bent for Leather.
Yeah, that's a good one.
My God, how did we not see that coming?
That's a good one. I like that.
Hell bent for leather.
Lincoln was right. You know, you can fool all of the people some of the time. And at times, seems to thank God we're running out. Power to the people.
So there you go. That was Russell at the Humanity for Peace rally, organized in large part by our friend Jose Vega. Beautiful day last Sunday. Very diverse crowd,
nice.
very diverse list of speakers too, and list of perspectives, you know, in the crowd and on the stage. But you know, much like the Rage Against the War Machine rally, just a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds there for one cause.
It was a scene, man.
Yeah.
As your friend Jerry Seinfeld would say.
It's a scene, man.
It was a scene, man. It was a scene. Yeah, it was very interesting. You know, a lot of us are here in New York, so there were a lot of people there like Mad Crab, who I've never actually met, who I got to meet, and your dad. The whole Weiss family was out, actually.
Yeah, they were all out. I didn't know they were all going to be there.
So yeah, you had a pretty wide range. I mean, you have a libertarian candidate for president there. Scott Ritter was there. I didn't catch that. That was a little before I came. You had some RFK stands out there. I didn't see any Marianne people. They were into Marianne.
I thought there was one.
They did not share that.
I thought Robert Penner said he saw one.
Did he? I missed it. I did not see any Marianne people. There were a few RFK people there. But yeah, and you know, you had the LaRouche-ites there. Diane Sayre, I think, is their candidate, right?
Yeah, that they run for Senate.
We're talking to him about that. But yeah, look, I mean, it's interesting because you do have kind of all of these anti-establishment factions are all anti-war wherever they are on the political spectrum. And then you have this very pro-war establishment.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's kind of what was demonstrated there. We live streamed the event to our Rumble page while it was happening, so we watched pretty much all of it. And if you go over to our Rumble page, you can see Russell actually checked in with us live from the event a few times on his StreamYard phone app. So, yeah, fun day, fun times. And thank you to those who showed up at that event. I know there were a couple people. My dad was actually telling me that a couple people said they found out about the event through our show, which is great. That's always good to hear. That's always good to hear. So,
and we will be expecting that Dave Chappelle puppet, whoever you are.
Whoever you are, right? Exactly. All right, folks, we're going to bring in some reinforcements for the remainder of our show. Tusker's here to join us for our main segments tonight. What's up, Tusker?
Going great. How are you guys?
Going good. Indeed.
The rest of the show is like class war a go-go. So he said, well, if the show's going to go in that direction. Let's get Tusker.
I mean, if I can just get some business just out of the way firsthand. Sure. I mean, yeah, thank you for letting me come on and cover the segments, but also thank you for giving me a platform to promote Kim Jong-un's glorious sunscreen. This has an SPF of 1 million.
Wow.
It also won the Trump Beauty Awards of 2022.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so in spite of,
No, go ahead.
So just in spite of what Yeonmi Park says, the North Koreans do actually produce their own sunscreen. And according to Donald Trump, it is the best sunscreen. It's a perfect sunscreen. And it has a dual purpose.
Sunscreen.
A glorious sunscreen. Not only can it protect your skin while you're outside underneath the sun, pushing the train in North Korea to make it go, it also can act as a train track lubricator to help make that process
right,
easier.
like a WD-40 type.
So it's this is a true worker's sunscreen.
Yeah. All right. Exactly. So I heard Yeonmi Park say that they don't have sunscreen. They have to use bug fat, like from crickets. They squeeze it on themselves before they go to the beach. They take handfuls of crickets and rub it on their faces. No. It's just an industrial capacity sunscreen for all your industrial and working class needs.
Beautiful.
That's very clever. They do a lot with a little there.
They do a whole lot.
Well, we're glad that you can come on and give that plug, because AOC this week appeared with an Instagram influencer and self-described beauty industry fairy godmother. That's actually what she calls herself. That's on her Instagram. Charlotte Palomino, to bemoan the overregulation of American sunscreen. So let's hear from AOC and Charlotte Palomino.
Let's see what important work she did.
Talk about sunscreen, specifically U.S. sunscreen, and how to fix it. Hello, everyone. This is Rep AOC, and I'm here with Charlotte Palomino.
I'm a brand owner, but also a licensed esthetician. U.S. sunscreen regulations are not necessarily making us more safe or better products.
U.S. sunscreens are far behind the rest of the world. I was in South Korea earlier this year, and it is so clear how far advanced the rest of the world is on sunscreen, and we deserve better here in the US.
How does the FDA regulate?
FDA is different than the rest of the world in that we regulate sunscreen as a drug instead of a cosmetic. It's regulated as a drug, has far more stringent standards, far more testing, far more scientific and clinical trials that are required, which is good. We want to make sure that things are safe. However, sometimes that can add a lot of bureaucratic and costs that prevent us from getting anything.
You sound kind of like a Republican.
Well, I mean that, but also, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we should play the rest of this video, because you know what this sounds like to me? This sounds like medical misinformation, right? I mean, the FDA, I will have AOC know, I don't know when she became a Trump supporter and sort of, libertarian. But the FDA is one of our most cherished and most esteemed institutions.
Yeah, they're never wrong.
They are a pillar of our democracy and a key to ensuring a fair and democratic economy. And so I don't know where she comes off second guessing the regulatory decisions of the FDA. That sounds like pretty dangerous stuff there. Sounds like maybe she should be deplatformed. Maybe she should be thrown off of Instagram, thrown off of Facebook.
She should.
Right? Why not?
Especially, I think Fauci said aluminum chips are actually good for your circulation.
Well, I don't know about that, but all I'm saying is that the FDA, the FDA is clearly beyond reproach, and for her to be sowing doubt like that could get people hurt. And I don't know who we can appeal to for any action on this, but I do remember a certain congresswoman, I think it might have been AOC herself, who said deplatforming works in response to Tucker Carlson being fired, right? So if deplatforming works and you're up here showing all these, articles and sources and citations, I mean, I don't know what they are, but what you're telling me is that I should take your word over the word of the Food and Drug Administration, and I think that's terrible. I think that's dangerous. I think she should be deplatformed.
Well, it's like when the libs were freaking out about alien apocalypse, right? It's not the alien apocalypse show. It's once people start asking questions, where does it end?
Right.
Well, it's not about sunscreen. Go ahead, Tusker.
I think AOC questioning the FDA, I think that is essentially what Keaton referred to it as. I think it's an assault on our democracy.
Right.
I don't see how that we can maintain democratic institutions that allow unfettered capitalist power to have control and say so over our elections if we do not uphold those institutions. And so this is a fundamental assault on those institutions.
Yeah,
they should be protected.
It's also a fundamental assault on Baz Luhrmann and his very famous video,
Yes.
Sunscreen.
Yes. Everyone's free to wear sunscreen, right? That was the official title of that. Indeed.
That was, yeah.
All right, folks. So I guess for the sake of putting on a show, we'll let this finish, but we just have to pause it there. And I just want everybody to understand that we are providing, what do they call it in YouTube world or Facebook world? We are providing a sort of, what are they, a countervailing view, right? We're issuing a countervailing view where we are providing context to make sure that none of our viewers come away misinformed.
We're fact-checking.
We're fact-checking, right. We're fact-checking and yeah, right, making sure that we're putting this in the proper context so that none of our viewers come away misinformed about the FDA and what sunscreen they should put on their body. All right. Now that we have that out of the way, we can let this go on.
And just for context, it has been since 1999. It was the last time that we had a new sunscreen filter in the United States.
When we compare the US standards to European standards in 2017, a Sloan Kettering study found that only half of US sunscreens met European protection standards. Here's the thing though, there is something that we can do about this. Congress has not been very aware of this issue, which is why there hasn't been a lot of momentum behind this issue. Truly, it's not too corny. Please contact your member of Congress, especially if your member of Congress sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. They have jurisdiction over the FDA. However, any member of Congress can develop attention and draw attention to this issue.
Okay, why? Okay, once again, I just have to say, I strongly advise against this. So you want your followers to call Congress. You just posted the phone number of the U.S. Capitol switchboard. You want us to call Congress and bully them into what? Reforming the FDA so that we can import shady sunscreen from South Korea and rub it on our bodies without knowing what the fuck it is? Doesn't the FDA exist to protect us from such, substances? I don't understand what she's doing.
And when we know...
This sounds like something maybe a Trump supporter would do.
Well, and there's better sunscreen in North Korea. I mean, slightly radioactive, but hey, I mean, that's what you need to make a good sunscreen.
Well, that's why we had Tusker here.
Yeah, that's the reason why I'm here. But I would also have to say, I think sharing the U.S. Capitol switchboard phone number, I think, is also an assault on our democracy.
Right, exactly. Who are we?
I mean, you have Congress? Too many people calling in and giving their opinions, and that would also erode faith in the institutions themselves. Like,
I mean, isn't this the kind of thing you didn't want to do for Medicare for All because of the relational harm?
Right. This sounds like it might cause some reputational and relational harm. I mean, if your colleagues start getting bombarded with phone calls from people demanding imported sunscreen from South Korea because the sunscreen we have here for some reason is not good enough, for a reason I'm not quite clear on, to be honest with you.
I'm not clear on that either. Like, I've never put on sunscreen and come away from the beach with a sunburn.
Yeah, no, sunscreen seems to work really well. Whenever you apply it properly, it seems to work fantastically well. But for some reason, we're supposed to believe that the sunscreen here is not up to par. And so we're supposed to call Congress and harass members of Congress about the FDA and their approach to regulating sunscreen. Interesting.
Which, yeah, I mean, if I could just say so, like in this context, she is using her platform to essentially engage in a demand and try to mobilize people to engage in a political action, contacting, their Congress member, whatever. She did not do her fundamental job here, which is educating the populace on why that this should happen. There was some language in there about, well, our FDA gets in the way of business. It hasn't changed since 1999. It's behind the other things, but she didn't actually do a whole lot of education in this, as far as like why it is important to working class people to care about this issue.
Right.
So I'm not understanding what the purpose of it is.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't even understand the pitch. I don't understand it's like she hasn't told us what's really wrong with our sunscreen, because she said it's important to regulate sunscreen to keep it safe, which I agree.
Yeah.
But then she's saying that because they regulate it as a drug and not as a cosmetic, maybe they overregulate or misregulate. Again, this is all very Trumpy and misinformation that she's pushing. Yeah. I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to give people the wrong idea that safe sunscreen is not safe or that unsafe sunscreen is safe. Plus, it's August 13th. We're not going to need sunscreen for that much longer anyway. Like, she should have made this video in May. Like, this is a Memorial Day video, not a Labor Day video. Yeah, it's a little late. By the time people get this sunscreen approved, it's going to be fucking November already. We're going to have to wait 7 months to use it, and then, whatever, it'll be moot.
Yeah.
This is just, it's sad. It's sad. It's really pathetic that when you consider that she started by protesting in Pelosi's office before I believe that was before she was even seated in Congress, right? She wasn't even a sitting member of Congress. That was her introduction. And now you ask, and I think this is what's perplexing everybody. Like, why did she even do this? Okay, one, if you ever watched her protest the Roe decision manicure video, she's a little bit of an airhead. So there's that element of it. She's a little dumb like that. But also, look, I mean, her progressive base has left her, as she has left them, whatever you want to call it, left. She doesn't have the left anymore. So I think she is just trying to follow through on the implications of how she's run her career. Can she be a congresswoman as Instagram influencer? And the kinds of bubbleheads who are going to vote for an Instagram influencer, now that you've given up on people with actual politics, this probably appeals to them, right? Did you see AOC said to call Congress because did you know they regulate a sunscreen as a drug and other countries do it as a cosmetic? Oh my God. And who was that woman she got? They were both so cute in that video. What's that number again? Like, that's who she's talking to. That's all I can figure. Like, she's just trying to shift to this Instagram base. Why else would you do this? I mean, no serious political actor is not going to make fun of you for this. So yeah. Who's it for?
I mean, I think if anything, it's probably to secure her exit from politics once with the articles that came out with the Justice Democrats laying people off, with Sunrise Movement laying people off, with the obvious hurt that the so-called squad is going to be undergoing with their fundraising issues. I think this is just her way to secure a career afterwards, which is going to essentially
she's
be
she's auditioning to be a brand influencer, you think?
Yeah,
maybe.
She is a very pretty girl. She's a very pretty woman.
But look, I think
cosmetic
that,
seems right for her.
I think she's very safe in her seat for as long as she wants it. I mean, she has the name ID. She can cruise on that. In her district, she's very, very, very popular. She'll always be able to fundraise off of her name. This could be it. I mean, a lot of times, like, look, I didn't even give her that much shit in the beginning when it was pretty clear that she was a bit of a narcissist and was sort of using her position as this, insurgent progressive, I would even say trend maker, right? She was sort of parlaying that into a sort of unofficial influencer career, right? And I didn't even hold that against her at the start because I was like, hey, look, if the most famous member of Congress is a Democratic Socialist, that's better than the most famous member of Congress being a Hakeem Jeffries type. So like, whatever.
Right.
As long as you're doing what we sent you there to do, then knock yourself out with this shit, right? The problem is when you do this in place of what you were sent there to do. That's when it becomes a problem, and that's what she's doing here. Let me just play the end of this real quick.
I mean, this just plays like this is a friend of hers, and they just got together and decided to do a cutesy video about sunscreen.
Right. Exactly.
Them to break through some of the regulatory barriers at the FDA and fund public research so that we can all enjoy the filters that develop out of the scientific process.
Just need to make some noise about it.
Totally. I mean, I love Korean sunscreens, but I want to buy this in the US. Why do we need to import them from all over the place?
Why do you love Korean sunscreens more than American sunscreens? I don't get what's better about the Korean sunscreens than the American sunscreens.
What is the difference?
Korean
you know, I'm not the darkest skinned person in the world, and it's never been a problem for me. American sunscreens.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, because it's not like she's saying the American sunscreens aren't safe, because she's saying the FDA regulates them as a drug, which is stricter than if they regulated them as a cosmetic. So it's not like if you're saying these sunscreens are poisoning us and they have better ones in Korea, then okay, fine. But you seem to be saying the regulation is too stringent here. So I don't understand.
Well, I will just as a caveat, I will have to say I am not aware of anything regarding big sunscreen. Okay, I like, I don't know the problems behind it. I don't know their waste techniques. Perhaps the product that they're making is very damaging to the environment. Like there are lots of issues that maybe can legitimize her caring about sunscreen. That's not the point. I think.
Well, that's not what she did a video about.
Right. That's
like,
not
it's
what
not.
She did a video.
I mean, as Keaton points as Keaton points out, and as you pointed out, she hasn't identified a problem. Like, what is the problem? Okay, so they've got what, stronger sunscreens? So what? You come out like fucking Casper after you go out in the sun? Like, what is it? Does it bleach you?
Sounds
like, what
the
do
problem
they? What
is
do
your
they
friend
have?
there isn't selling enough sunscreen.
That's how this plays. It plays like she is literally doing a commercial for this woman.
Right, because I'm not convinced what the problem is. She hasn't articulated what the problem is and why it needs solving urgently.
We're importing Korean sunscreens, and by God, the Americans should have a monopoly on that market. Everyone should be using American sunscreen and not our glorious leaders' sunscreen that can even protect you from a nuclear strike, guys.
Right. Yes.
That's the sunscreen we need to be buying in this day and age.
Exactly.
And just so you know, that is going to be one of your gifts if you donate to our GoFundMe for our primary coverage, North Korean sunscreen.
Yeah, sunscreen. Right, exactly.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to take all my
not only
lotion
works
bottles up.
as sunscreen, it can power a small reactor in your backyard.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Indeed. John Senna, 2011. Thank you so much for the $2. Got laid off Friday. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, my friend. Screw Bidenomics. Love the show. Well, we love you, man. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to hear the bad news, but I hope you get on your feet again soon.
You're not. They're not doing. Oh, is this because of the strike? You're not doing another season of The Peacemaker?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, right. Exactly. Let's go here. Yeah, Robert Penner says, yes, I saw a guy in a monk costume wearing a Marianne embroidered bag. Yep.
Really?
He reported that from the scene. Ellen says, y'all need to talk about what development means. Doesn't mean peace. It means extraction for the enrichment of the corporations. Well, yeah, in that case.
No,
in
that's
the case of Niger.
that's what we call the Clinton model.
Exactly. The Clinton model. Bennett Weiss, my dad is here. Thank you, Dad. You're not talking about the absence of elephants in the room. There are about 140 people there, and Jose alone has 75,000 Twitter followers. Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough to get a crowd. It is tough. That's one of those things.
Yeah. I was trying to be positive, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive. Rage Against the War Machine had a little over 1,000, and look at all the things that went into that.
Okay, actually, I'll give you my anecdote. Since you're raising it, Mr. Weiss, you've given me permission now. You can't make this shit up. There was another rally going on the same day by the Intrepid, which is on the west side. The UN is on the east side. And because of whatever left bullshit antagonism between the two groups, they couldn't get it together to have one rally. So you had two small rallies across town from each other.
Well, I know UNAC.
They could not agree.
I know UNAC and all those groups, the ones that put on the March anti-war rally that was, the counter to the Rage Against the War Machine anti-war rally. I know they didn't endorse the rally for that reason, because of the LaRouche bullshit and all that stuff.
Right.
And so that could have been. Well, I didn't know they had one the same day.
They had one the same day, and I'm standing there on 42nd Street, and it was symbolic. You have a group of maybe 9 or 10 people walking through the crowds on 42nd Street, the very, Disney family-oriented audience in their mock radiation suits. No war, no war, like 9 of them. Nobody really gives a shit because it's New York and it's 42nd Street. They're just, and I just came from this other rally that was very small, and I'm like, yeah, these people couldn't stop a fucking tricycle, much less a war. I mean, come on. You can't even agree to hold one rally and you're gonna stop a war. It was not promising.
Well, that's man. I think
yes,
those
Mr.
groups,
Weiss, thank you.
I think those groups are just brutal. Like the ones who, I'm not talking about Jose's. I'm talking about the groups who wouldn't join the Rage Against the War machine. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just
I know.
insane.
I know. And then they're just stumbling along on 42nd Street there with, it's New York. Look, when I was living in Chicago, I remember a guy roller skated by in like orange neon. And I literally didn't even pay attention to it because I'm from New York. And people around me were like, "Do you see that?" And I literally said, "See what?" And they were like, "That guy with the neon." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, right." So it was like that. It's New York. 9 people in mock radiation suits with a sign. Whatever. Nobody cared. Nobody paid any attention.
It just seems ironic to me that you were attempting to have not only just an anti-war rally, but a pro-peace rally. And you have certain factions of groups that aren't willing to even seek peace with other factions to hold a united peace rally.
Exactly.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I was standing there with my wife on 42nd Street, and I pointed out the radiation suit group. I said, "And this is why we fail." That's it, right there.
Silver Wolf says Tusker's mic is a bit loud. Well, Tusker's on her phone, so there's not much you can do.
You take the shit for once.
Yeah, now Tusker's getting the incoming.
Yeah, give it to her. Give her a taste of what I go through with you DSA motherfuckers every fucking week. Fucking anti-clapping fucking cunts.
Let's go to segment number 2. Rich Men of North Richmond. We got some more chats here. Actually, let me do this here. AOC went from a bartender to Avon lady in 5 years. Yes, thank you.
You know what? That would be a very funny on the ground thing to do, because I know where that bar is. It's off Union Square. Like, go interview employees there, what they think about her.
Right, indeed.
And just like all of those things, the Democratic Party is a pyramid scheme, just like, your door-to-door makeup sales.
Did you work with AOC? Can you tell us what she was like?
Me?
Get the dirt. No. I mean, that's what I'll ask them there. The place is named Tortilla Flats that she worked at, I think. Tortilla Flats.
Oh, I know Tortilla Flats. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
well, no. Wait, no, that's wrong. Tortilla Flats is the bar in the West Village. That was the Sex and the City location. Tortilla Flats is on like
it's a place right by Bread's.
Washington Street or something. Yeah, no.
The place I'm thinking of, it's right by Bread's.
Yeah, it's near Union Square. It's in Flatiron.
Yeah,
Tortilla Flats is, I think, Hudson Street or Washington Street, something like that.
I just seem to remember I read something a long time ago that like whatever restaurant or bar that she like bartended at required people to turn in a headshot. Like, I seem to remember that being like some type of rumor, but I don't know if that's
you know what? That's not the first time I've heard that with New York bars and restaurants.
Like, I'm not 100%.
That's not unheard of. Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be the first place to do that.
Well, in that case, no wonder she's concerned about sunscreen.
Right, exactly. Fair. This week, folks, Virginia resident Oliver Anthony released a song called Rich Men North of Richmond, which, as the title implies, bemoans the corruption of the political class and their indifference to the plight of poor and working people. It was the first song he ever recorded using professional equipment. His other music was recorded using only the camera and mic on his cell phone. This song quickly became a viral sensation and is now number 1 on the iTunes country chart, having displaced Jason Aldean's Try That in a small town. So you could see the needle is moving perhaps ever so slowly in the correct direction. But right now, this song is number one on the iTunes chart in pretty much a day. So we will take a listen to a little bit of this. This was tweeted out by many accounts. And so here we are. We'll just play a little bit of this tune here.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. All it is, living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. 'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end. 'Cause the rich men, north of Richmond.
All right, so we'll stop there for a minute. That's verse number one. We'll play verse number two in a moment. So far, not much there that any of us would particularly object to. Overtime hours for bullshit pay. Even the lamentations about being taxed to no end, like I've always said, I think working class people are overtaxed considering what they get for it, 100%.
Exactly.
So, I don't have a
exactly.
problem
You know,
with
what
any
do you
of
get? What are you getting back?
Right.
That's why when we talked about Cornell West, I mean, my focus was purely strategic. Like, fuck them. What's your tax money going to?
National security with 800 overseas bases.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. That's what you're paying for.
Right.
So, and it's a manufacturing jobs program, as Chris had just pointed out in America,
it's
the farewell tour.
The strangling of the developing world. That's what you get for your tax money.
Right.
Exactly.
So I don't read that lament as right wing.
No, I don't either. All right, now let's get into a little bit of verse 2.
Oh, his second verse, I think he starts thinking about Putin. Like he just literally starts saying like, Putin, guy. Like he starts doing that, and that's when
Putin is a strong leader.
Exactly.
Man for our times.
A man for our times. Yeah.
I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we
See that? I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm confused about that. I don't know anything about that.
Islands are safe and effective.
Yeah, they're safe and effective. I don't know what he's talking about there. I don't understand.
That really went over my head.
Went way over my head. I mean, I don't know. This is a very sort of down to earth song. You know, he's a kind of a salt of the earth guy, and to make such an abstract, sort of unintelligible reference there,
That's actually an assault on our democracy again. This is where it gets right wing.
Is that? I mean, I don't even know what he's talking about there.
Questioning islands, yeah.
Yeah. What about? I don't know. Anyway, this is the part that most people had a problem.
It's not like we have an elite class of perverts or anything.
Exactly. Right.
folks in the street ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare.
Oh,
God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame. What?
All right, then it goes into the refrain, and then it just basically repeats out. So we basically get what the song is there. And, you know, look, a lot of people latched on to the welfare bashing there, which I, of course, you know, don't like to hear, obviously. But
what are fudge rounds? What is that?
I don't know what fudge rounds are. Maybe that's
Tusker?
Is
that a southern
thing? Is that a southern?
Yes, it's like it's a little Debbie delicacy in the South. Every single time the welfare checks get cut, you just see a throng, 300-pound people just ambling towards the grocery.
Yeah, there's a run on the fudge rounds, exactly, first of the month.
Yeah,
right?
they don't get regular food for their children. They just get fudge rounds just over and over again.
Yeah.
Fudge rounds, a grape drink.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can, probably tell from that, his politics are a bit of a mixed bag, right? It's a little bit difficult because this is not a Chamber of Commerce Republican type. He's not a guy who's like, well, you should be happy with the wages that you have. They're actually too high. We shouldn't raise wages. He doesn't, even in the, swipe that he takes at the, welfare queens, right? He prefaces that by saying we have people dying on the street without anything to eat, and then you have the welfare people gaming the system, right? It's not this like blanket condemnation or judgment of poor people, right? And that kind of resentment that working people feel is actually very, very widespread. And given the desperation that a lot of working people are feeling, I never held that resentment against poor or working people. This resentment that, there's people out there gaming the system. Like, I never agreed with it, but I understood where it was coming from. It's coming from a place of pain, coming from a place of hardship, coming from a place where, you feel like you're busting your ass and you're getting nowhere. In fact, you're drowning further and further. And that's just something that's very, very widespread. And, one of the things that I just want to put up here, because he said in a subsequent video, I don't have the video, but I'll put up the slide and a quote. This was from the Billboard music article. This is a quote that he gave in a video. I remember as a kid, the conservatives wanting war and me not understanding that. And I remember a lot of the controversies when the left took office, and it seems like both sides serve the same master, and that master is not someone of any good to the people of this country. This is what I thought. See, after the 2016 election, I thought many on the Bernie left were sort of all in agreement, more or less, that Trump won not because there was this surge of racism and Nazism in the country, or because, Russia manipulated people into voting for Trump. No, Trump was elected in 2016 because people like this guy, too many of them in too many places, felt too fucked over by both party establishments, and they would have, many of them, voted for Bernie Sanders in the general if they had the opportunity to do so. Given that they did not have the opportunity to do so, they voted for Donald Trump, and that was a completely predictable sort of democratic outcome given the circumstances at the time.
Right.
I thought we were all on the same page, and that guys like Oliver Anthony, yes, they have misplaced and misdirected class outrage and class anger or class consciousness, but that they have that class consciousness in them. And so what our job is to intercept them and redirect that class rage at the real enemies, which are not the welfare people getting the fudge rounds, but the bosses who are not paying working people enough to the point where welfare is not a system to game, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I used to work, the minimum wage in New York was $7.25 an hour, a 40-hour work week at minimum wage after taxes were taken out in New York State, paid about $240 a week. So if there's a guy on welfare who's getting a check for $200 a week from the government, what, you're going to blame him for not going to work? Why? I'm working 40 hours a week, making $240. He can work nothing and get $200. That means if he went to work, he'd be making an effective wage, a net effective wage of $2 an hour, because he'd be working $1 an hour, because he'd be working 40 hours a week for $240, or he can work no hours a week for $200. So that guy is obviously not the enemy. The enemies are the people who are not paying you enough money to live, which he recognizes in the beginning of the song. So I thought, we were all kind of on the same page that we need to take that misdirected rage of the populist Trump base and figure out a way to direct that in the right way, which means we don't demonize people like that. We don't dismiss people like that. We don't mock people like that. We don't otherize people like that. We engage with people like that because they have more in common with us in terms of their outlook on the world and the country and what is wrong with it than the cowbell left. Right? But that doesn't seem to have remained the case, judging by a lot of reactions to this. So I'm just going to pull up a few different reactions to this song here. you have here, I want to go first to Chris Mattman, who is Matt Chrisman from Chapo Trap House. Again, these were the go-to Bernie people in 2016. Right. That's how their podcast blew up. Contrast the simpering, whining tone of this to classic working class anthems like Take This Job and Shove It, and tell me soyification is not a universal phenomenon. Now, I don't want to pick on Matt Chrisman, but if you look at him, he's pretty much the personification of soy boy. I mean, I don't like calling people soy. I've never have called people a soy boy.
That is such an incredibly fucking dumb take. I mean, this is the first I'm seeing this. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
wow,
I'm really disappointed in that. I typically consider Matt Chrisman to be maybe the smartest.
Well, he's definitely the smartest of the Chapo guys for sure. I think he's very smart.
Yeah.
How is that whining and simpering, and supposedly you understand the breakdown in American towns and industrial cities? Like, you know, the Chapo Trap House guys have that critique. So how could you interpret that this way? That's incredible to me. That's what he came away with.
Yeah. Well, it gets worse.
I mean, there's a very, and I mean, it's so dumb because they're really different songs as well. I mean, Take That Job and Shove It. It's it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and it was written in a very different America where people weren't really in this kind of pain. Like that song is largely just about, yeah, that manager thinks he's cool, but I'm fantasizing about the day I tell him to fuck off. Like, it was just kind of, it wasn't really a class thing. It was, I mean, it was, but in a much more humorous spirit because the stakes were not what they are now. People were not suffering the way they are now. It just wasn't about that.
The comparison is a working class song that urges on people to fight, and then a song that is more like a lament.
Right.
So those are the contrasts. One is a call to the banner of arms for the working class. The other is a lament of the struggles.
Right. Exactly.
And the other one, it's not even really. That's what I'm saying. If you put it in the context of the time it was written, and I'm very familiar with that song because I actually like David Allan Coe. If you put that song in its context and you look at it, it was more what they used to call a novelty song. You know, the tone of that song is much more, wouldn't it be funny if this working class guy told his asshole manager to go fuck himself, like everybody kind of wants to. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying it wasn't even really a rallying cry so much as it was an entertaining little song. Whereas this is really a cry from the heart of a very different country than the one that was written for.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Here's Owen Higgins, who is the editor of Common Dreams, another progressive, left outlet. This guy is not super talented, but using his skills for evil. If it weren't for the dumb reactionary politics, his song would be rightly ignored. It's not, quote unquote, good.
All right, man. You got to let me do the fop voice on that one.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is super talented, but using his skills for evil. If it wasn't for the dumb reactionary politics, his song would be rightly ignored. It's not good.
Well, that is he's not super talented. So he's saying it's not super talented, and that if it weren't for the reactionary politics, it'd be ignored because it's not even a good song. Here's Risky Liberal with the elephant and the Ukraine flag. Rich men north of Richmond. Conservatives are so gullible it hurts. Who supports coal miners' health and black lung benefits? The Democratic Party. Haha. Who raises the minimum wage, time and a half for overtime? The Democratic Party. Who supports unions? The Democratic Party. So that's just a random lib. I don't know who that is. But I just thought that was quite the funny take, especially since this minimum wage increase thing. I don't think a lot of people don't realize this because obviously we all know that Joe Biden allowed the Senate parliamentarian to block the minimum wage increase this time. I think a lot of people have it in their heads that Obama raised the minimum wage because the minimum wage was raised in 2009 to $7.25 an hour. But that was actually in accordance with a bill that George Bush had signed 2 years earlier. That was just the scheduled minimum wage increase from an act that Bush signed in 2007. So actually, the last time a Democrat actually raised the federal minimum wage was 1997, when Bill Clinton raised it to $5.15.
Right,
At the beginning of his term, it was $4.25. So actually, in the past 3 decades, Democrats have raised the minimum wage once for 85 cents an hour.
Right, and they just broke a budding railroad union strike. Stop them from striking. Like, what support are you talking about? And also, you're reading a lot into this song, because if you look at his stated politics, he doesn't support either party. Actually, I went and I listened to some of his other songs before the segment, and he had one, I think it's called Doggone It, where he says Democrats and Republicans they're all the same. I've never seen an evil city slicking bureaucrat was worth anything. So he's not a Republican Party supporter. Like most people living in this country today see it as a corrupt uniparty, and don't support either. If you're fanatically supportive of one, that's what's really funny about how mainstream these people think they are. If you're fanatically devoted to either one of these parties, you're not the mainstream, you're the lunatic fringe. If the way you're evaluating that is where you are politically in regards to the rest of the country, most of us don't believe in either one of these parties. Most people are not these, fanatical Republican supporters. How many Steve Schmidt Republicans are there?
Well, I mean, if to address the song more directly, like, regardless of whether you think it's a good song, regardless of whether or not you think that there are some problems with it, with some of like the welfare stuff, the fact that it went viral, I think is the more important aspect to it. So remove the individual that sang the song, remove like some of those things from it, and what you are seeing is an increased consciousness that the system doesn't necessarily work. And even if I don't agree with all of his politics, I can still respect the fact that he is representing something that a large portion of the American population is feeling. And if we're talking about the so-called welfare, the fudge rounds of it all, if we're talking about that, then I would say that is where I would see it as like a reactionary type thing. Instead of blaming the system itself for putting people in that type of situation where they're maybe that alienated, maybe that disaffected, maybe that depressed, to where that's all they're going to do. You don't have an analysis of why people are trapped in kind of that.
Right.
If they do happen to be cheating welfare, which are very few people, it does happen, but it's very few. You do happen to be cheating that, then you're probably in a very desperate situation. And I think that it's for all of the working class to try to lift up everyone. I don't necessarily think that subsidizing fudge rounds is good for the working class. We need a strong and healthy working class, because we're the productive part of this society.
Well, that's the thing that I think is really important to point out, is that it went viral for a reason, because most people in America, right? What is it? 62% of Americans don't have $500 for an emergency if they need it. So most people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. Most people in America are fairly close to the wall financially, which means most people in America think they need to be paid more. They think most workers need to be paid more. They think politics is corrupt. They think the people in power are serving the wrong masters, right? Not the people, not the voters, but they're serving another master who, what does he say in there? Here, I'll pull this up again. A master that is someone, not someone of any good to the people of this country. That's where most people are at. And most people who are in that situation do harbor a certain resentment, whether they will admit it or not, whether they will speak it or not, whether they will express it angrily or not. Most people do harbor a certain resentment for people who cheat the system to get free stuff, right? Like they do. That's totally a natural thing for people to feel. I don't think it serves the left well or the working class well to hold that resentment against people, because it's a natural human emotion that they happen to be feeling. You can't hold that against a person. you can try and redirect that through engagement. Right. But what I don't understand is if you're Chapo Trap House or if you're Common Dreams, if you're one of these outlets that really branded themselves as this progressive pro-working class alternative to a Democratic Party that turned their back on working people, then how could you not see this guy coming a mile away? How could you not understand where these guys are coming from? And how could you not see an opportunity in a moment like this where a song like this catches fire and goes viral? How can you not see that as an opportunity for engagement to actually build your ranks politically? It's extremely suspect that these people are shitting on this guy, because what that tells me is that you're not serious about building any kind of movement. You're not serious about growing your numbers. At that point, just be a Democrat. Just be a Democrat, because functionally speaking, you're no different from the Democrats. Democrats are anybody who doesn't subscribe to this, this, and this. It's because they're ignorant. It's because they're uneducated. It's because they're bigots, racist. You had people trying to interpret this song as some sort of lost cause Confederate anthem because he said rich men north of Richmond. It was so obvious that the rich men north of Richmond were in Washington, D.C. Because, see, if you understand, Richmond is in Virginia. This guy lives in Virginia. Washington, D.C. is just north of Virginia, and a lot of D.C. politicians live in the North Virginia suburbs. Get it? Rich men north of Richmond. That's the idea. It's called a song. It's called a play on words. It's not the kind of song that most liberals are used to listening to, unlike, we are never, ever getting back together, or my poker face, my poker face. I understand that's the level of lyric writing that you're used to admiring so much, right? But this is a nice play on words that actually relates to his home. Yeah, right. Exactly, right? And so that's why he says rich men north of Richmond. But there were so many people who were deliberately, in bad faith, misinterpreting this, that this guy actually posted as a pinned reply to his YouTube video. Oliver Anthony Music actually posted this. Just to be clear, rich men north of Richmond refers to Washington, D.C. politicians. This is no way a knock against people from up north. That's the songwriter having to post that because so many people were very cynically misinterpreting it. I honestly, as soon as I heard the song, I knew rich men north of Richmond means D.C. and the D.C. suburbs, because he's a Virginian, and Richmond is a big city in Virginia, and D.C. is the city north of Richmond, where all the rich men live. The people who want to control everybody, like that's obviously who he was talking about. So you have just cynicism and snark and bad faith interpretations, calling this guy a bigot, a reactionary, a this and a that. What he is the average person. And that's why the song went viral, because he represents the attitudes, opinions, and yes, resentments and angers and anxieties of the average person. The average person is a mixed bag. And if you're not willing to engage with that, then you're not really serious about doing politics.
Right.
And if you're not willing to engage in that, you are never going to get them to a more radical politics.
Of course.
If you are not willing to accept people where they are and try to work with them and try to do any amount of coalition building or anything like that, then you can guarantee that your politics is going to stay the same for as long as you're alive, if you're just going to write everyone off.
Well, that's it. I shared this. And, most people got it. And basically my take was, okay, who do you think you have a better chance of getting behind Medicare for all? This guy or the cowbell left? Who, if your life depended on it, who would you pick? Who do you think you could persuade to go balls to the wall for raising the minimum wage? This guy or the libs? Or the cowbell lips. They'll say that they support it, but they don't care. They don't need it. It's not important to them. Now, I've said this before on the show. I've been all over the country, and my experience is that working class people are pretty much the same. New York, Illinois, down south, they have very similar attitudes, very similar resentments. I remember when all the working class people voted Democrat. I mean, you could not find a Republican in my neighborhood with a search party when I was a kid. You go there now, they all voted for Trump. They're all Trump voters. So when I hear this guy, I say, okay, well, this is the result of Bill Clinton. This is the result of Barack Obama. This is the result of pissing on the working class, not only pissing on them for decades in terms of policy and economics and trade deals, but projecting such an obvious, absolute contempt for people like this. Where did you think they were going to go? I see a guy like this, I feel the same way I feel when I see Matt Walsh. I can't prove this. When you look at the type of humor he has, it's a personality style that we always would have associated with the left. Very kind of pugnacious, anti-establishment, counterculture, kind of dry, sarcastic sense of humor. Matt Walsh had come up 30 years ago. He would have been writing for Saturday Night Live, right? But you come up today, when the establishment institutions that are destroying your life and the life of the people you know are liberal or presenting themselves as liberal, well, where are you going to go? You're going to be oriented towards joining the right, because that's who you're going to see as fighting against those institutions. It's also very interesting to me, if you look at some of the lyrics there, that refrain he keeps hitting, they want to know what you think. They want to know what you do. That's very particular to this moment and how a lot of people feel. Like some of those lyrics are kind of getting into some of that Davos stuff in a way, the feeling that there's this global elite that's very invasive and trying to tell you what values you should have and how you should live your life. Now, I hear that, and this is a critique that's very traditionally left. Like this kind of critique of society being this oppressive force that distorts reality, that's trying to control people and tell them how to live. That's a traditionally left point of view. And usually we think of the right as being the people defending the institutions of society against that kind of leftist cynicism.
But it's also a weaponization of the government issue, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about now, right? When you say we want to control what you think and what you do, this is January 6th is one part of it, but also, there is the perception out there that the government has turned on its own people. That's why Donald Trump is the favorite to win this nomination, right? And that's why he becomes a heavier favorite with each indictment, because people doubled down. People are not going to blink first. A guy like this is not going to blink first. And the throngs of people who he represents are not going to blink first, because they see this as, an ultimate showdown of sorts, an ultimate battle. This is it. This is the final round. The country is collapsing. The country's going to hell. We can either go down swinging, or we can, go with Meatball Ron because he's more likely to, because he's more electable, right? And that's just not flying with them right now, because they feel like this is a battle that they have to wage, and so that's what they're doing. And so, that's I think that speaks to a lot of what that verse is about there. Also, Tusk, I'm sorry, but could you just lean back a little bit, because it's not that you have a mic, but your phone is the mic. So if it, because
I got you.
It's a little loud. Perfect.
All right,
Better.
I can do this. I was just gonna say
you're the bad one today.
I know. I'm sorry. I think that the him talking about they want to know what you think, they want to know what you do. You're right, Russell. This has long been a left critique. The left critique has long been that you have a structure of power that is primarily concerned with the narrative control. I mean, they were worried about the narrative about Vietnam. They've been worried about the narrative of the Korean War. They've been worried about the narrative of the JFK assassination. They've been worried about the narrative of Iran-Contra. This is not new. The narrative control is one of the only things that the ruling class still has left to them as a means of being able to manipulate society, because we've collapsed in the way where it's very much harder for the majority of people to have any type of mobility, class mobility, or anything like that. So we've taken away all of the reforms that were gained. Those have been slowly whittled away. So people are more and more left in the stagnation of essentially a dying empire. So the only thing that they have left anymore is control over the narrative. And so it is incredibly important, and but it's not a new thing. I know that there are a lot of people that have kind of like picked up on it more recently. You know, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And they've said, oh my God, what are they telling us? This isn't what reality is. But it's long been that way, where they are not telling us.
You know what lyric I kept thinking of as a parallel, even though it's a very different song. If you look at the lyrics of Let the Sun Shine In, which was written very consciously as a kind of articulation of the 60s counterculture ethos, and they say, walking in our winter coats, wearing smells from laboratories, facing a dying nation of moving paper fantasy. And if you look at what's in that lyric, there's this rejection of an artificiality, right? Like, you're not wearing natural fibers, you're wearing polyester, you're wearing things that were made in a lab, and moving paper fantasy, it's an earlier version of we're living in this artificial media generated environment that's not real. You listen to some of what he's saying here, and there's some of that ethos in it. We're living in this artificial world. We're living in this world that's inhuman, and it does in some way harken back to that counterculture's fixation on authenticity and naturalness, and how modern society had become completely detached from our human nature and our human needs. But now what passes for the left has not only been absorbed into that system, they've become the staunchest defenders of the establishment and of these artificial constructions of reality. In fact, they've come to champion a much more extreme vision of artificiality than I would argue we've ever had before in its postmodern influences. So, you know, you've got some of that old school Woody Guthrie kind of class-oriented folk in there, but you also have some of this earlier left counterculture stuff. And it's just another example of what has often come up when we get into these figures who are considered right-wing. It's very confusing because so much of their sensibility is drawing on ideas that, at least for 2 generations, we've thought of as left-wing ideas. It's what I got, man. Keaton, sometimes people don't know he has mild epilepsy. He freezes.
But
no, I thought the Tusker was gonna pick up there. I thought you were ready to say something. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that puts a button on that segment. I think, you know, it was just crazy. I mean, when I first saw this song, you know, I listened to the first verse and I was like, oh wow, you know, it's weird that all these like right-wing accounts are tweeting it out. And then I heard the second verse and I'm like, oh, I think that's why. And I actually think that the fact that that second verse gets into the more reactionary stuff is actually why it became a hit, because that's what got it boosted by a lot of these very high profile right-wing handles. You know what I mean? So in a sense, you got to take the good with the bad, right? Because if they didn't think they could use it for their agenda, they probably wouldn't have shared it, right? Because the thing is, you know, a lot of Republicans that you talk to, like, and you used to run into these guys more. See, now the PMCs are mostly Democrats, right? And it's like the small business owner, like the blue collar small business owner is like the Trump voter, and then a lot of the, you know, rank and file workers are the Trump voters, right? But, you know, it's a situation where, you know, if it used to be when I was growing up, there were the people who you would talk to who, you know, had that same sort of disdain for the welfare queens. They were usually like the PMCs who thought, no, this is a great country. There's opportunity everywhere. Stop complaining that your wages are too low. Right, you know, stop complaining that you can't get ahead. And the welfare people, they're like, you know what I mean? Right. But you didn't have this giant cross section of people who were saying, yes, wages are too low, but we're also going to shit on the welfare people, right? And now you have that because a lot of the working class has been immiserated to the point where now you have a lot of people scraping to get by and resentful of people who have less but are working less for what little they have, right? And that's just a sign of an economic and social collapse, a certain decay. But if there is a populist left response to that, like if you're interested in responding to that,
right?
If you feel you have an answer to that, then why would you react to this guy the same way that a K-Hive troll would react to this guy? It makes no sense.
And I got some of those people who responded to my post. I had some fucking moron telling me, you know, there are working class people on the left. Oh, are you one of them? Because I'm betting from that response, you're not, Sunshine. You're not.
Exactly. All right. Sorry, Tusker, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, you have these members of the right that can sit there, listen to parts of the message and like take it and run with it. And then you have the professional managerial class left that is just like calling it reactionary and rejecting it wholesale.
Right.
So why is it that the right is able to take the portions that they like that fit with their agenda and then they can latch onto it and promote it, but the left's not able to take the message that is appropriate for the left and run with that?
No,
like, why do we
point.
constantly have to be in this position of saying, no, if you're not 100% right, then you're 100% done?
Because the so-called left is full of neurotic suburban milk babies.
Right. I mean, and there's a big poser element to it, right? Right. And a lot of this is a hobby to a lot of online people. And look, this goes for people who are on the online right as well, right? Like if you're super online, politics tends to be, somewhat of a social scene for you, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't have genuine convictions along with it being a certain social scene, but it provides that for you. And for a thing to go truly viral, it has to sort of tap into something that's a little deeper than people's like online personalities and online clicks, right? It has to be sort of majoritarian in some way for it to truly catch on the way this has, where it's #1 on the iTunes charts, right? Country music. He just played a farmer's market gig today.
I sent you that video, and you could see how quickly. Right, this became an anthem of defiance.
Exactly, and so
for that audience,
so in order for it to reach those heights, it has to transcend like the limitations of online discourse and sort of online tribalism. Who's in my clique? Who's in a rival clique? And things like that. That's what a lot of politics is. It's like that on the left. It's also probably like that on the right to a large extent. But this tapped into something a little bit bigger, which is why I think it grew. And I think a lot of people on the online left can't see past that because all they see is, whoa, bad take. Like there was this one guy who commented when I posted it on the thread. He said, doesn't he understand that his tax dollars don't pay for SNAP benefits? And so doesn't he understand that that's a stupid point? I'm like, oh, you mean, hasn't he read Stephanie Kelton? Doesn't he know MMT? Right? Like, are you kidding? Are you fucking joking? I mean, the guy's a fucking off-the-grid farmer in Virginia, and you're like dunking on him because he doesn't understand.
And former factory worker. You ever work in a factory, motherfucker? Then shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up with these fucking people, man. And just to maybe put a button on it, unless somebody else has something else. Listen, man. If you're the fucking if you're the establishment, right? And every goddamn single fucking thing that you speak out against catches on like wildfire, don't you start getting a little fucking nervous? Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, Sound of Freedom, this song, every single fucking thing you don't like just takes off like wildfire, and clearly when you say you don't like it, it helps it. Aren't you nervous? Like, doesn't this tell you anything? Does that really not inspire any kind of self-examination? And as friend of show David Brooks, not maybe someday, when he's being marched to the guillotine in those final moments, he'll say, "Do dissonance." I always like that show. Doesn't it cause you, like he did in that article? I mean, give the devil his due. Cause you to say maybe we're the bad guys when every single fucking thing without fail that you come out against becomes a huge hit, much more popular than anything that you support?
Right. No, indeed. Indeed. All right, let's take some Rumble rants over on Rumble. Thank you for your support over there. Got a lot of people in the chat over there. 183 over on Rumble. Thanks for being here, guys. Bonzo Beans for $1 says, listen to Sideways by Travis Meadows, the most amazing songwriter you ever heard of. Wonderful human being. All right, I'm a big music fan. I'll put that on the list. Sideways by Travis Meadows. Got it. I'll remember it. Thank you for the donation. Oops, that was wrong. Oh, no, that was not wrong. Jake, you just got to be careful. Sometimes you hit the ticker scroll thing by accident. Yeah, it's okay. I'll uncheck it. Oh, no, I understand why you did that. Okay, beautiful. All right, I'll take care of this. Taddy Mason, thanks for the $2. Appreciate that. I didn't see it as welfare bashing. It was calling out people who abuse the system because it's frustrating to see people loading up on free snacks while you struggle to pay for necessities. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair interpretation. I would say let's be as harsh as we possibly can and say it was welfare bashing. I've seen that from a lot of working people throughout my life. You know, to me, I don't hold it against them personally that they feel that way. To me, that's an opportunity to engage, right? Because this guy seems a lot closer to realizing that the real villains in society are the bosses who don't pay them enough than, you know, K-Hive people, cowbell waving, you know, shit libs who are just obsessed with the next Trump indictment, right? Like, this guy seems a whole hell of a lot closer to that truth than a lot of the libs are. Taddy Mason.
That's it. If you have to go into battle with the establishment, you need to convert this army. That's
Right.
an army. You're never going to win anything with the DSA motherfuckers. The kind of people who saw this and reacted with visceral negativity and saw him as the enemy, that should discredit those people in your eyes immediately. Those are not the people you need.
Right,
Those
because
people
they're
are going to
just
be
not-
talking shit about theory forever. It's a fucking navel-gazing cosplay pose for them. It's not existential.
Indeed. Taddy continues, I can understand being upset at people 300 pounds buying a bunch of snacks with welfare when you know you can't afford the same snacks because you can barely afford the food you need. No, I understand that too. Like I said, I think it's natural to feel that way. I don't hold it against them that they feel that way. I think they're wrong, but I don't hold it against them that they feel that way.
Listen, man, people are less upset about that than I can tell you as somebody who has gotten into the, healthy at any size shit on a number of occasions. Man, you say anything about fat being a choice, and oh my God, they come out of the fucking woodwork.
Yeah, but that's not what this is.
Everybody
This
wants
is-
to challenge that.
This is welfare bashing. I mean, that's not really what he was
Oh,
talking about.
sure it is. Sure it
Yeah.
is. But I think some of the reaction might also be the 300 pounds part.
Bonzo Beans, thanks to the $1. To me, seems like things are getting serious in the US of A when a country music artist starts singing about politics, the surveillance state, yes, social justice, public health, and the class war. Indeed. Appreciate it. And you also say, with your background in literature and theater, I'd enjoy seeing you referencing incorporating works of theater into your commentary. Well, thank you. We make some references every once in a while, but thank you,
we
Bonzo
do.
Beans.
We
Appreciate that very much. And thank you guys for all those Rumble Rant donations. Those are super, super helpful. Thank you so much. Robert Penner says AOC is squirting the real issues. Yeah, that's a good one. Good one, Penner. Thank you for the donation, my friend. Philosophical Thirstworms. NAWAPA could save the U.S. economy and environment all at the same time, but the LaRouchians can make really good ideas not palatable to normal people. Like I said, we've talked to Jose quite a bit, and I think what they were saying at that rally was quite palatable and quite sensible. Like I'm not saying I endorse their platform, but I've not heard Jose or Kynan or anyone who I talked to in that movement say anything crazy to me ever.
No.
Right? They just seem like ordinary people to me.
Yeah, look, I'm not a joiner. I've definitely got the Groucho Marx. I wouldn't join a club that would have someone like me as a member syndrome. But we've spent a lot of time talking to those kids. And, I don't completely understand the LaRouche thing. But in terms of the reverence for classical culture and music and literature and philosophy and studying the Greeks, and that all seems to have had a great impact on them, and it's something that I support. Beyond that, I don't know very much about it.
I'll just say, I've met far weirder motherfuckers in my life, for sure.
Damn right. It's like what I've always said about the Hare Krishnas. As religious fanatics go, they're my favorites.
And far more cultish people too. I mean, you talk about, oh, they're a cult. Oh, fuck you, man. The fucking Democrats are the cult. The blue no matter who
Excellent
people,
point.
the Joe Biden people, the fucking Hillary Clinton bots. I mean, they're as cultish as you can get, right? So what are you gonna say? The LaRouches are a cult, but they're not. I mean, that's just insane.
And they don't teach you to sing Beethoven's Ninth.
Exactly. Right. Music sucks too. Hunter Biden's Coke Stash, thanks for the $5. Love seeing Tusker on the stream. Love you, Tusker. There you go. You got a fan. Beautiful. See? Little salutes. American Autopsy. Thanks, Hunter Biden's Coke Stash, for the $5. Thanks, American Autopsy, for the $5. You guys should talk to Franco from Frank Analysis about his critiques of Rage Against the War Machine. There were people with valid criticisms. Yeah, there may have been people with valid criticisms. I didn't think there were not valid criticisms. There's valid criticisms of everything. The point is, are you willing to set those aside for an afternoon and go rally to stop the war? I mean, that's what it is. It's not that there's not valid criticisms, right? I'm sure there were valid criticisms of this rally, right? I mean, the point is, are you willing to rally behind a cause despite whatever criticisms you have? And this is largely a function of online political culture, and this is the problem. That was part of the problem, or part of the design flaw with the Rage Against the War Machine, which is that it was put together by a lot of podcasters and a lot of very online people, and God bless them. I mean, they did the best that they could, right? But when you swim in that online space where everybody is constantly ready to critique everybody for a bad take or a misstep or a poorly worded statement, you're dealing with people who are very difficult to organize because they are so predisposed to jump down your throat the minute you step out of line, right? Whereas when you're dealing with people who are less online than that, you get a lot less of that because real life is not like that, right? In a day-to-day conversation with another person, you don't pounce on them for every little mistake that you catch that they make. First of all, you can't because it's happening in real time. But second of all, you don't want to because that's not the way people generally like to act, right? Like nobody wants to be around you if they have to walk on eggshells around you. But in online spaces, we all walk on eggshells around each other all the time because the minute somebody types a word they shouldn't have typed, boom, they ratio, they swarm. That's just the way it is.
I mean, this is one thing I saw Crystal talking about that actually I agreed with. Yeah, man. I mean, the algorithm has made this Thunderdome. It definitely encourages conflict, controversy, online fighting, and it's definitely elevated people who swim in those waters, and who are good at swimming in those waters. Now, on the bright side, there are whole genres on YouTube that are not conflict based. There are a lot of people who create really good history stuff and that kind of thing. But for this kind of stuff, yeah, it's very hard to just play it down the middle. Like the algorithm really doesn't want you to do that. Yeah, I mean, you can see it. Go back and look at our videos when we cover unions, things like that. It does not do anything like he said that about them and then they hit them with a pizza. That stuff does very well.
Indeed. Ruthless criticism. Hey, Russell, you're safe from Putin, aren't you? I guess.
I mean, we shall see. We shall see. All right. So now I'm getting, okay. So look, behind the scenes, we've really been trying to work on my microphone setup, and now people are saying I'm too low. So I don't know.
You're too low?
Yeah. Jesse here says I'm too low, and I've seen that from a couple of other people today.
You sound perfectly normal to me. You sound good.
Do I? Yeah.
You sound perfect to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's that Tusker's loud, so it's making you seem low.
Maybe.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. So it's like somebody has to piss off the DSA people.
Tusker, go back into your kitchen and talk from there. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm low. Somebody said I'm low compared to Tusker.
Compared to Tusker, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
we're gonna ship a microphone down to Tusker soon because this way she'll have a mic. She's working off her phone, so there's really not much she can do besides
we talked
back
about this. Guys, trust me, I know it's a problem. We talked about this before the show. I lamented and cursed my tech setup. I trust me, it's a problem. I'll try to sit back whenever I talk, so I don't.
That's all
blame
right. I think we're making do with it. Okay, but yeah, we'll get you a microphone.
All right. So
I understand.
it seems like most of them feel my level is fine. So Jesse, might be your thing, man.
I think it's a comparative issue.
They're saying it's your computer.
I think it's a balance issue. Tusker for president, says Hunter Biden's Coke stash. Got a very big fan there. Thank you very much.
Aw, Hunter Biden's Coke stash. You could be my VP.
Beautiful. Philosophical thirst worms. Grew up in Williamsburg. Saw a lot of welfare system abuse from Hasidics. Oh, interesting. I support robust safety nets, but more can be done to assuage concerns. You know, that's another thing. I mean, I don't know about the Hasids, but the assumption that knock on the welfare people had to be a racist knock. You know, I mean, I think that says more about the people who are making that charge than people who aren't, because there's no reference to race in the song at all. And Tusker, you would know this better than me, so please do correct me if I'm wrong. But down south, rural Virginia, rural North Carolina, rural Arkansas, rural Appalachia, whole lot of fat white people on welfare. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. No, I mean,
so the idea the idea that people perceive that as a knock on black people, I think, maybe it just says something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the majority of people on welfare are white.
Yes. Yes. And red southern states are disproportionately full of people on welfare. They say that all the time, right? That's something that the shit libs love to say. Well, the red states take more welfare money than blue states, right?
But that's because of what has to do with like rural poverty. I mean, rural poverty has long been a thing, especially in like capitalist industrialization. Usually people move towards the cities to gain the wealth. The places in the rural areas stay poor. And then there's the degradation. And then, you got the city slickers that go move off and tell everyone else they can go pound sand. And that's one of the reasons why you have kind of some more reactionary politics in rural areas.
Well, the first time I drove cross country, because I'm from the Northeast, it blew my mind because I had never seen white people that poor. We don't really have it in this part of the country. Like, I had never seen cardboard shacks with like corrugated tin roofs where they'd grab some plywood. Like, I never saw anything like that. It doesn't exist in this part of the country. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about now. It's a while ago, but I saw like little tar paper shacks and things. I thought that was from the movies. I didn't know you really had that. Do you still have that down there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Besides the city areas, I mean, you can pretty much drive, sometimes even within city limits. I mean, within city limits, you're definitely talking about more of like the urban ghettos, which usually are more primarily Black and brown people in those areas. But if you drive at all 20 minutes away from like a city in the South, you're going to get into white rural poverty. So it's just as extreme. It's not a skin color issue. It's a class issue.
Right. Indeed. Darren, thanks for the $5. Miners Island is an Epstein reference. I mean, I don't know. I thought Albert Epstein lived in Europe. I thought Albert Epstein was a European. So I don't know. But maybe you're right about that. Thank you for the $5. Appreciate it.
We're not on Rumble right now, right?
It's possible.
Garble, yeah, it's possible. Garble, thanks for the $10. Poverty scarcity makes people think more conservatively. Poor people are more right wing. If liberals care about well-being of poor people, they have to care about the feelings of conservatives. I don't know what the statistics are on that poor people are more right-wing. I haven't looked at that in a while. I don't think that's generally true. But I do understand what you mean. I do understand what you're saying, that yes, if you claim to care about people, you have to care about people despite a lot of those attitudes, right? You don't hold those emotions against people, unless it is, like just mean-spirited, like bigotry and things like that. But that's not what was expressed in this song, Philosophical thirst worms, thanks for the $5. Matt Christmas is the reincarnation of Trotsky, pure navel-gazing and unending analysis paralysis. There are possums out there with better praxis. He's actually, I always thought Matt Christmas was very, very smart. And, look, perhaps he was just being overly snarky there and overly sarcastic and stuff like that. I mean, we make jokes like that a lot, but it's just not a great thing to tweet out, especially since, I mean, Chapo now is barely even a political show. It's basically just a talk show now. I mean, they don't really talk politics much anymore. Yeah, it's just kind of bullshit.
What are they
do like movie reviews and shit now.
Really?
Like, they have become truly nihilistic in the sense that listening to that show, you would sense that there is no political battle to be fought anymore. And it's all just done after the Bernie campaign. That was it, right? And so that's kind of what you get. And I don't listen to them much anymore for that reason. But I always thought Chrisman was very, very bright, and always had a big picture analysis of everything, right? He would always get more conceptual. So yeah, I mean, that was obviously a trash take, and maybe it was just a bad attempt at a joke. That's possible.
Yeah. And I would also have to say, just kind of like your observation of like everything is kind of post-political now, and like the Bernie Sanders movement was the last hope. I mean, I don't think that you could actually have a real working class movement unless you can get past the Sanders movement.
Of course, right.
So
I agree.
Even though it might seem like it's a little dark and everyone's kind of running all over the place and a little bit disorganized, I think that that's just kind of like the natural function of having an attempt at having like a political say-so in like the ruling class society. Whenever that gets shattered, then you have to splinter apart for a little bit and then coalesce around something again. And hopefully that's what we're able to do.
Yes.
Coalesce around something that has a stronger message that can reach more people, and not be as stuck in like this one thing, insistent upon working inside the Democratic Party, insistent on all those things. Like, we can broaden our perspectives and actually really go against the ruling class.
Well, not have all of our eggs in this one basket, which is kind of what that movement was. I mean, all the eggs were in this campaign.
Yeah, and it was just very limited for that reason, among others. But for that reason especially, it was just very limited as to what it could do. Thanks for the super sticker, 118 Debbie. This will be our last super chat for a little while. We're going to do our last segment after this, and then we will get to all of them, so don't worry. We are not going to leave you high and dry. But Boeing 757 pilot, thanks for the $20. It's very generous of you. I fly into cities across the U.S. and typically spend a day exploring. It's beyond shocking how much decay, poverty, and struggling exists. Misery is everywhere. I make a good living, yet struggled while living in L.A. Yes, yeah. Indeed. Well, that's part of what informs that song too. I mean, and that's why, again, it doesn't go viral on iTunes if it's only popular amongst poor people or working class people, right? You know, a lot of poor people, working people don't listen to iTunes, right? You know, it has to get it, like, even that's what that Alabama woman was saying in her rant that went viral a few days ago, which we covered and put out as a segment. You know, even middle class people now, even people making $100,000 a year, can find it almost impossible to live, depending on where they live and where they have to live for work. Like, you know, if you work in New York City and you have to live within an hour of New York City, I mean, if you're not making six figures, you're going to be sweating over a rent check or a mortgage check every month. Like, even if you're middle class.
Well, and there's the thing, and no offense to LA, but you're paying more and more to live in a worse and worse place, right? I mean, you're paying thousands of dollars to live in a place that's falling apart, that's crumbling, you know. So it's just the cost benefit of living in a lot of these places just is making less and less sense. And I think that's reflected in the numbers. People who can are voting with their feet and leaving these places, including New York. I mean, New York is not having the problems that Los Angeles is having, but it certainly has the skyrocketing rent, which is very difficult. I don't even have an economic theory about why you still have skyrocketing rent in a city that lost more population per capita than anywhere else in the country. I don't get it. I don't get how it's sustainable.
It's probably not sustainable, but in the short term, what they're thinking is that if we can find a renter, we can find a tenant, Even if it takes a few months or a year to get somebody at triple the rent or double what we could get to fill it now, it'll work out in our favor. That's capitalism. Capitalism is not about serving the most people. It's about making the most profit. I always put they could sell more beers at Yankee Stadium if they charged $5 a beer than if they charged $14 a beer. But it's not about selling the most number of beers to the most number of people. It's about maximizing your profit. So if you sell, whatever, if you charge, just to use big round numbers here, you'd rather charge if you charge $10 a beer and you sell half the number of beers that you would sell at $5 a beer, you're making more money because you're paying less labor to sell those beers, right? It's not about it's not about putting products in people's hands. It's about maximizing the return for each unit sold. And if that means fewer people get to consume the thing, then so be it. Fuck it, they don't care.
Yeah, there's also the tax write-off element at play. If they don't rent it, they write it off. That you see more with commercial properties. Like you'll see people get evicted from commercial properties and then have the property sit empty for 5 years. That's very common in New York because they're just going to wait until Chase Bank shows up and is willing to pay a crazy amount of money for that space. And meanwhile, they're writing it off. You don't see that historically. You don't see that applied as much in residential. It just seems like if you're losing population, you're going to run out of people to rent these apartments. And usually the residential landlords don't work the tax break like that. I don't think the margins work out for them doing that and leaving it empty like that. And you got to remember, if that apartment sits empty for 6 months, it would take a lot of years of somebody paying $100 to $200 more to make that up, to make up the amount of money you lost leaving it empty for 6 months.
Sure.
So this is part of why I don't understand how it's sustainable. I can understand maybe staying at the same level, but we just hit a record in April of average rents in New York.
All right, well, sorry, go ahead, Tusker.
No. I just to end that off, I think that capitalists essentially do not have any loyalty to any one nation, any one group of people, anything like that. As much as they can extract profits wherever, they're essentially they're rootless cosmopolitans. They have no solidarity with any other class except for their own.
Sure.
And so I think that essentially explains their predatory practices.
Yeah. It's not a moral question. It's a supply and demand question. I just don't understand where you're getting enough demand to drive prices up to that level when we know that the city is losing population. It doesn't make sense.
Well, let's do another New York story here. So this is our last segment of the night, and then we'll get to our the rest of our super chats. On August 5th, a riot erupted in Union Square in New York City on 14th Street, major hub, major subway stop there, big activity center there in Union Square. It's a park running from 14th Street to 17th Street, pretty central to the downtown Manhattan area. And so we can look at, there's a brief summary of the events from CNN. They did a little short.
Chaos broke out in New York City's Union Square on Friday after Twitch streamer Kai Cenat held a giveaway event.
So Kai Cenat is a Twitch streamer, an influencer. He was giving away PlayStation 5s. He announced, okay, I'm going to give out a bunch of PlayStation 5s in Union Square Park at a certain time. Be there. That's it. No permitting, no alerting anybody that this was going to happen so that they could make security arrangements or block off streets so that overflows didn't flood the streets and block traffic and people get hit by cars. And it just erupted into a total shit show because you had, PS5s being given away, and there's this big star who's going to be there. This guy has 20 million subscribers throughout his various social media accounts. He's got a few million on Twitch, a few million on YouTube. I'm assuming a few million more on Twitter, Instagram, all that shit. And so, it devolves into a complete shit show very, very quickly because you just had too many people in too small a space and they're kids, right? I mean, you're young kids. Kai Cenat is 21 himself, and a lot of the people who showed up, they're teenagers, right? So what do you do when you're a teenager? Free PS5? Cool, we'll be there. And, you get a bunch of teenagers in a crowd. What do? they act out. They're teenagers, right? I'm not like holding it against them or anything. But it was obviously a situation that could have very easily been predicted to get out of control. Like I said, Kai Cenat himself is 21. That's basically a kid, right? As most of us would think of him as. So he's been charged with 2 counts of inciting a riot. One is a felony and one is a misdemeanor, as well as an additional misdemeanor charge of unlawful assembly, since there was no attempt at a permit or anything like that. Kai has since apologized for going about this giveaway as he did. Like I said, he probably just didn't think of it. Probably think, all right, a couple hundred kids will show up. I'll give them some PlayStations. I'll take some photographs and, whatever. Like I said, he's 21, right? He probably doesn't even know what red tape you're supposed to go through to have an event like this. But fellow Twitch streamer Hasan Piker drew some attention for his take on the events of the day. So we just showed you there. Kids hanging off of cars. There were kids jumping on top of cars and kicking in windshields and, destroying all kinds of property and things like that. And a couple people did obviously get hurt. More than a couple. There were several sort of injuries. There were fights that broke out. One of the guys who got injured was a guy who owned like a newsstand. If you walk around a park in New York City, there's guys selling, magazines, newspapers, snacks, drinks, things like that. A guy got beat up trying to, fend off the crowd. And here is Hasan watching that video and reacting.
His whole kiosk was ransacked. All the ships were broken and pulled apart. Things were taken off of it. And he was saying that he was injured because he was trying to stop the kids, and they hit his head, his neck, his back. The gentleman is in his 60s. He was talking to EMTs that were there and talking to the police that were there, giving them a report of what happened. But a totally just innocent victim in all this, that he was just doing his job, going about his day, and his business got ransacked there. But from where we are here, it does that the officer circumventing them in that sense. And from my perspective, that's.
I fucking despise local media, dude. There you go. There is no better representation of how dog water local media is and how much they exacerbate.
Sorry, I gotta pause it 1 second. Was he even paying attention to what he saw? Because at first I thought, okay, this guy's just being an insensitive prick. But now you see he's eating food or whatever. Is he even paying attention? Did he even realize that he was talking about a guy who just got the shit beat out of him?
Circumventing them in
eating
that
a fucking
sense.
hot dog or something. I don't know what the hell he's eating.
I fucking despise local media, dude. There you go. There is no better representation of how dog water local media is and how much they exacerbate narratives that you see on Fox News. What role they play in the boomer reactionary pipeline. Local media talking about $3 worth of fucking Doritos. Okay,
that's
there was a bank run. Reactionary pipeline. Local media talking about $3 worth of fucking Doritos. There was a bank run or some shit.
You're not talking about $3 worth of Doritos. First of all, in terms of property damage, there was a lot more damage done than $3 worth of Doritos. That's not even the point, as far as I could see. The point is that this working guy who probably puts 16-hour days into that newsstand got roughed up by these kids trying to protect what he uses to make a living. These people,
they care so much about immigrants and non-white people. Here's an old non-white immigrant who got beat up at his business, and all of a sudden, what? He's reactionary because he has feelings about it. The news is reactionary for talking about it. And if you want to talk about standards, what if this was a MAGA rally? How would you cover that?
Right.
How would you cover it? What if it was a MAGA rally where this happened? Would you cover it that way? Would you call the news out of line for focusing on this poor immigrant who got beaten up?
And it's an especially bad look considering how rich he is, right? I mean, Hasan Piker lives in this Beverly Hills mansion. He drives a Porsche, right? He really flexes his wealth. In the screen cap that I used for this show, and I didn't even realize this until I had put it in there, he has a Rolex hat on. the hat with the Rolex logo on his head.
Well, that's another thing, and this was a point that Greg Foreman, the black conservative, made. That was actually how this got on my radar. He covered it, and he said, this guy lives in a gated community in a multi-million-dollar home. What do you think he would do if this happened in his neighborhood? Do you think this is what he would say? What if they came into his garage and started fucking his shit up? What would he do? Would this be what he was saying about it? Oh man, the local news, they were talking about how these kids broke in my house, and actually, it was great. It was a great experience for me. I loved it.
What do you call it? The boomer something?
$3 worth of fucking
boomer
Doritos.
Reactionary.
Boomer reactionary.
There was a bank run or some shit. Like, also want to fucking make it seem like, this is a riot that was completely out of control.
I like that.
Make it seem like,
look at the image that he's watching.
riot.
As he's showing the that's very much the CNN. The protests are fiery. But
it's tragedy porn met with also like black unruly teenagers.
Well, also, look, the other thing about this is this was not a political riot. This was not like genuine unrest bubbling over where you could say, like during the George Floyd protest, I said, yeah, look, I mean, shit's gonna burn. Property is going to get damaged. So be it. In fact, there was a story, Tusker, you might remember this. I think I talked to Russell about this offline. There was that restaurant owner. I think it was in Minneapolis. He was like an immigrant restaurant owner. I think he owned an Indian restaurant or something. And it burned in the riot. And he said, it's okay, let it burn. It's only a restaurant, right? Because he understood that this was a major cultural moment and there was genuine outrage about something horrible that happened on camera for everybody to see. And I think the community actually built him a new restaurant. It was a very sort of heartwarming moment. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a fucking dumb kid not realizing what the hell he was doing. He announces this giveaway for PS5s. And look, I don't even hold it against Kai, Cenat, really. I mean, I don't take it personally against him. He doesn't know it. He's 21. Who knows what you're supposed to do when you're 21? You figure you'll bring a van full of PlayStations, give them out. What's the worst that could happen? He didn't know. I'm not holding it against him.
Mistake.
Right. It was a stupid mistake. Stupid kids make stupid mistakes, right? It happens to everybody. But the point is, how you could sit there and say, well, they're acting like this got out of control and just dismissing the experience of this immigrant.
As you're showing the image of this being completely out of control.
This is not, and look, I almost brought this up to Shama when we had her last week because we were asking her about the wisdom of, riots and the efficacy of, disorganized protests and things like that. And I didn't want to pull a vanguard on her and try to get her to gossip about Hasan. Hey, what did you think about what Hasan said? But she gave an answer to our general question that could very easily apply here, which is that it's not good for socialist movements to dismiss the safety concerns of working class people. Like a guy who fucking owns a newsstand, he doesn't want the newsstand getting fucked up. He can't afford to have the newsstand fucked up. If the newsstand gets fucked up and the shit gets taken or ruined, that's a huge loss for him. People don't understand what these guys go through, these street vendors
he doesn't
in New York.
necessarily have insurance for that. This guy's
not necessarily, and even if he does,
family.
the nut that these fucking guys have to pay, the permitting fees to set up. Do you know what a hot dog vendor permit fee costs in Times Square? It's 6 figures a year. I used to have the number, but it's like $150,000 a year to set up a hot dog cart in Times Square. So you see these guys, they look like working class guys. They're handling cash all day. You think, man, these guys must be getting rich. No, they got to sell like $250,000 worth of fucking hot dogs before they see $1. That's what these guys do. If you drive through the city at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, these poor guys are schlepping their food stands on a trailer tied to a pickup truck. Yeah. Then they got to get there. They got to dislodge the trailer. They got to go. They got to set the thing up. Work 14 hours a day to try and take in enough cash to meet all their, nut. And then they got to drag the fucking thing back to the apartment. I mean, you're talking about driving this shit through New York City. I mean, it is extraordinarily difficult work. When you consider the hours that these people put in, it is extraordinarily tough work for very, very low pay. And so when a bunch of kids come and they start fucking up the stand, like your fucking life flashes before your eyes because you're like, I'm going to get destroyed here. I'm going to get destroyed here. But this guy doesn't know anything about that. You think fucking Hasan Piker knows anything about what it's like to tow a fucking hot dog stand on the back of your truck and park it in the middle of the city and be out there for 12 hours in the heat or in the freezing cold or in the rain and then go home with barely enough money to get the bills paid? No.
Right, and that poor guy gets beaten up.
Right.
It's just what a disgusting little creep. I'm just amazed anybody would take that guy seriously. Like, why does he have an audience? Like, really, I don't even understand it. I mean, he's not the only person I don't understand, but that's a very extreme example of I don't get it. But we actually brought Tusker on here because a lot of times when I talk about things like this being very bad for the image of the left, some people think it's reactionary, and we've talked a lot about what the actual communist take on this is, if I can say that. And Tusker, can you explain what the take is on this kind of an event and on rioting in general, uncontrolled rioting?
So, uncontrolled rioting, while it may be warranted for the individuals engaged in the riot, they might have a reason to feel aggrieved. They might have a reason to riot. Wanton destruction and unorganized violence is very unsettling, not only to the professional managerial class and not only to the capitalist class, but it's also very looked down upon from the working class perspective. Watching cities and streets be destroyed, feeling as though it is unsafe to walk in your city, in your local community, that is very much a working class concern. That does not mean that I'm saying that every riot is a disaster, everything like that's not what I'm saying. But you have to have some amount of political organization whenever you are choosing to have that riot. So whenever you are choosing to do that, you have to have an organized demand. If you don't have an organized demand, then it's chaotic and it's very difficult to get people behind you. If you are just destroying things for destruction's own sake. The working class has to organize itself to where they have actual demands whenever they start showcasing that type of in the streets movement. If you don't have the broad majority of the working class behind you, then it will be quickly torn down by the media, the people that don't agree with you ideologically, and you'll probably lose people that even might agree with you.
And that's how you get Nixon.
Yeah.
You want Nixon, that's how you get Nixon.
And then it's also one of those things that if you had a lot of the broad majority of the left in the United States, if they knew anything about history, then they would know about just essentially the infiltration by the government, by strike breaking organizations.
Well, we have stories of pallets of bricks out there during the BLM riots. Where'd they come from?
Well, I mean, let's take it even further back than that. I believe it's in the Haymarket riot. Back in, I don't know, that was like the late 1800s. No one, I still don't think people really know who fired the first shot. I bet you it was the Pinkertons. I bet you it was the strike breaking organization. Right. Usually it's the first group of people that start the violence are usually in with the ruling class. And that's whether they're involved in the movement. They may not knowingly, they may not be like an infiltrator per se, but if they are doing an action that will ultimately turn the public against you and have people start to divide and splinter and come up with a different strategy or whatever, they don't have to be a member of the ruling class, but they're acting as a member of the ruling class. They're doing their job for them while claiming to be on your side. And I think that that's what the left really needs to be more concerned about, is you need to be able to recognize when it is that people are acting in the interest of the ruling class. And that would be more chaotic and unruly forms of protest that turn people against you and your cause.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for that. And I also think, when it comes to a guy like Hasan, he's just taking his cues from his online peers, right? Like he just assumes that, okay, because this is a riot and the police are being called in to control the riot, I have to take the side of the rioters and downplay it because that's what's expected of me in this space, right? There's no actual analysis of what's going on. You're just taking
fiery
your cues,
but peaceful.
Right. You're just kind of taking your cues from people in the space and sort of anticipating how they would react if you gave a bad take or if you said, oh, wow, they shouldn't have done that. Right. That's what it seems like to me. It doesn't seem like he's really thinking about anything. It seemed like he wasn't even paying close attention. He's like eating fucking sushi or whatever the fuck he had in his mouth. And just, a minute of video played. Oh, let me just throw out a take that will be, perceived as sympathetic to these young kids. And like I said, in my take, I don't even blame the kids. They're a bunch of kids, right? That's not the point. The point is you got this worker getting beat up for no fucking reason. Right. And rather than dismissing what happened to him as, a bag of Doritos got stolen, right, and make fun of it. I mean, that's just, that's
like
a loser.
Just the optics.
That's a political
like
loser.
this image of this poor old man who
Right.
clearly got punched in his face.
Right.
Yeah, would you lose a $3 bag of Doritos and you're sitting in a multi-million-dollar house?
Yeah, right.
Come on,
Like, how do you
man.
think
Like
that's
that is the fuel for the stereotype of the limousine liberal, of the liberal, one rule for them, another rule for everybody else. What if it happened in your neighborhood? It's fine in other people's neighborhoods. The NIMBYs, right? The Martha's Vineyard people sending everybody to an army base with their little sippy juice boxes, right? I mean, that's what that is. That's what that is. That's what gives fuel to that. And we've all experienced it, man. I remember once when I was driving a horse and carriage, I literally, this could have come out of a Fox News editorial page. I had an animal rights activist driving an SUV with a Massachusetts plate, get out of it with God knows how many blood diamonds on her hand, and not let me get to work in order to save the horse. Meanwhile, her whole deal was like a crime against the planet. And,
Right.
But I couldn't go to work.
Right.
Well, I mean, this is also just one of those things that having someone like Hasan, and I'm not saying it's only him. There are dozens of these people that claim to be the left. Now I see Hasan being promoted constantly in my Twitter promotions. Like, even though I haven't watched a Hasan thing in 2 years, he'll constantly come up in my algorithm on YouTube whenever I'm trying to find something to, entertain myself. He's clearly being boosted by, these
Yeah, there's got to be
platforms.
something going on there. Yeah, indeed.
And I can't help but think I've never seen an actual communist being boosted by the algorithm. Usually they're suppressed. So if he's supposed to be representing the left, then I don't understand what the left is. It's certainly not
exactly
his viewpoint, where he's more concerned with vibes and drip and these cultural presentations and these hot takes. He's so incredibly smart and so incredibly effective that he can just sit back, chew on some fucking cud, and then come up with the most left-wing take of fuck that store owner. I'm sorry, what do you mean fuck that store owner? That guy was a fucking human being. Okay, he doesn't deserve to be beat on by the police or by the crowd.
Obviously.
His business is just as likely to be subsumed into monopoly capital as any other mom and pop shop. And why have any animosity towards the small landowners?
Well, these are the AOC boosters. I mean, this is what I mean. This whole faction of the left just comes off as so unserious to so many people, right? I mean, this is the DSA left. This is the Jacobin left. This is all that. They just come off as out of touch rich kids who just do this because it's what they do, right? It's their social life, right? It's their job now, right? I mean, I'll give myself a shameless plug for a meme that I made. But I made this meme today. It did pretty well. If this triggers you, but this doesn't, then you're not a leftist. Yeah, I mean, if you're more offended by this guy than you are by that, then what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, what are you like? I don't understand.
And they are.
They are.
I've seen very, very little comment on AOC's sunscreen influencer video compared to their comments on this guy's song.
Exactly.
I think it just represents a ideologically bankrupt left in the United States that ultimately does not have its priorities straight, cannot do any type of analysis to recognize where it is that you can create allyship and where it is that you can bridge divisions and stand up against the divide and conquer methods that are used by the ruling class that will try to divide the working class at every single opportunity that they have to pit us against each other, and for them to tell you that your enemy is the guy that sells newspapers on the street corner and not the guy that produced the newspapers in literally the crosshairs of power. They hold all the power. They control the narrative that they want to control so very much. But it's the guy that sells the newspapers that should be beat up. I don't think so. You've misplaced your priorities if you're worried about that guy.
Well, you got two things going on here. It's kind of a theme with north of Richmond and the reaction to it. These guys like Hasan, I mean, they're at this point, they're just personalities making money off media. I mean, that's it. They're just media figures. Like, do they even have beliefs or convictions? Or are they just playing a role? I think a lot of them are just playing a role. It's just their business at this point. It's their business model. Then you have these, like I said, man, I'm not from the suburbs, man. I'm from the street. I can smell that shit on these motherfuckers when they comment on things like that song. When you look at how they formulate things, if you ever lived a day in your life, if you ever did a day of hard work in your life, if you ever did some years of hard work in your life, if you ever been broke, if you ever actually looked into an empty refrigerator and didn't know how you were going to put any food in it, if you've ever had that experience, I'm sorry, you just would not react to this song that way, even if you don't agree with some of what he says, because you would understand where he's coming from. If you're having that kind of automatic reaction to that, you don't know that side of life, man. You don't know that side of life, and you should shut the fuck up, because you're actually making us look bad. You're making the whole movement look bad, because a big part of why that guy and a lot of people like him ended up conservatives is because of people like you, because you disgusted them so much and you projected such obvious contempt towards them that they went where they were accepted and not judged as anybody would. That's human nature, man. If you didn't want to lose these people, maybe you should have thought a little more about what their problems are instead of judging them and demonstrating your superiority to them, or your self-imagined superiority.
Well, because a big difference is when you are looking at it under glass, right? When you don't actually have anything at stake in the outcomes, right? You're just observing and commenting. All of this is just a matter of your opinion about politics, about economics. It's all thematic. It's abstract in that way. It's not real. You can't touch it. You don't have you're not actually interacting with it in a tangible way. This is what I think about politics and about the world, right? It's almost academic. When you're in it, the way this guy's in it, yes, you have opinions, but you also have it. You also are dealing with it in a very grubby and hands-on way, which is going to inform your opinions, because you're not just looking at it objectively, right, under glass at arm's length. You're actually in the middle of it. And in the middle of it, yeah, of course, if you're busting your ass and can barely get by, of course, it's perfectly natural that you would feel some resentment for people who don't work and get the refrigerator filled with the fudge rounds. Like, that's just a natural thing to feel. It's not something that you could judge someone for if you have any idea of what it's like to be in that position, right? To be in that spot. I'm lucky. I've never looked at an empty refrigerator and thought how I'm going to fill it, but I've had some years where I've been up against it. And when you're up against it and you're just scrambling to get any gig you can for any amount of money per hour and working from one to another, and okay, I'm going to work at the grocery store for 6 hours here, then I'm going to jump in the Uber and work until midnight and then up at 6 a.m. Like, I've had years of my life where I've done that, you know? Yeah, in the middle of that grind, would I blame myself for feeling resentful of the welfare guy? No, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't, because I have a politics that I'm always thinking about, just because it's the fucking kind of guy that I am. But I could understand how a person who's not interested in politics, doesn't think that deeply about it, whose interest is sports or whatever, might think, yeah, no, that's fucked up, right? Like, I can't judge somebody for feeling that way. All right, let's go to the super chat so we can get out of here, because we've done enough labor for the evening. But we're gonna get out of here soon.
we did a yeoman's work.
Exactly. Thanks to the $4.99. What does Morning Dew look like on MSNBC? Yeah, Morning Dew competes with Morning Joe Fridays, 9 a.m. By the way, folks, just a reminder, program note: we're on tomorrow, post-duopoly show, and then Tuesday night we'll be back here. No show Wednesday. No show this Wednesday. Show Tuesday instead. But thank you, Samuel Bruce. We appreciate that. Ellen, member chat. I put the fudge rounds line into contact with the drowning in alcohol line at the beginning. That's the other thing. This guy is a recovering addict, recovering drinker, you know, so he's had vices of his own throughout the years, you know, so that's an interesting parallel that you draw there. You know, interesting sort of thematic analysis of this song.
Hang on, is this a real thing, fudge rounds? Does anyone know what these are?
Yeah, they're a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a little Debbie snack.
It's a little snack.
Ah, okay. Do we
Is
have
it like
them
a
up
devil
here?
dog?
I think the fudge rounds, it's kind of like an oatmeal cream pie, but it's a chocolate cookie with chocolate drizzling and chocolate frosting on it. But I think that's what fudge round is.
They'll sound good.
Okay.
We should sell
Well,
fudge
sounds pretty
rounds
good.
at his concerts.
We should.
Sell them in the parking lot. Sell them to the tailgaters.
and we'll have a big sign, no EBT.
Yeah, right. Cash only. Yeah, exactly. Mason Stone.
Fudge round is Russell's pet name for Zach from the Vanguard.
Yeah, right.
That's
Exactly.
that's going to be the sidekick in the Indiana Jones sequel.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Welfare class not to blame, but understandable. Why working class don't admire them. People working for shit pay instead of relying on welfare have understandable disdain for those who won't even try. Well, that's what I said. Yeah. Indeed. Courtney Conover, thank you, Courtney. Happy to see a lovely redhead, not just two JOOs. All right, perfect. Yeah, rounding out the panel. Rounding out the panel. Thank you, Courtney. Elizabeth says, great analysis, Russell. Pissing on the poor. That was from earlier. Thank you very much for that. That's very kind of you. We appreciate that, folks. Folks, like I said, if you're giving us multiple super chats per stream, please head over to patreon.com and put some in the Patreon pool. And thank you to our Rumble viewers. A lot of people in that Rumble chat. That is super encouraging. And please, if you're watching on YouTube, go to our Rumble channel, just rumble.com/do-dissidents, and please follow us over there. That is very, very important. You know how much better this episode would have been tonight if we could have just done this on Rumble only and not had to police what we've said? Do you have any idea how much better this show would be if we didn't have to deal with this fucking fascist bullshit of watching your every word?
Definitely spent a lot more time on the man who deleted himself in the jail.
We could have done so much more. Like, there's just so much more that we could have done in every aspect. So the show would just be a lot better if we didn't have to depend on super chats. If we could just get enough patrons signed up to the point where the super chats weren't so important, because right now we couldn't do the show without the super chats. But if we didn't have to rely on that and we could just do the show that we want to do, it would be so much better. You guys would love it so much more. So if you're giving us multiple super chats, like, don't get me wrong, we're super grateful for the super chats. That's what's keeping our lights on now. But if you're good, like, I see some of you guys keep super chatting us. If you keep super chatting us and you're not a member, it won't cost you any extra money. Just take some of that super chat money and go become a Patreon.
Become a patron.
Exactly. I mean, that's just so huge, because it's just, it's fucking annoying. Like, it's frustrating. It really is frustrating to think that we could be putting out a better product if we weren't so reliant on the YouTube policies, right? It's just, it's frustrating. Because Russell and I, you know, we're theater guys. We're used to, the great thing about the theater is it's the ultimate free speech platform. You could say fucking anything in the theater.
Not anymore.
Even now, even now, I know Broadway, you know, it's culturally it's shifted. But the great thing about the theater is you can say whatever the fuck you want. There's no ratings board. They don't give you an R or an NC-17.
Yep.
It's okay. This is for adults. You can come and you can hear. That's what made the theater so great, so exciting, is you go and see a David Mamet play or a Martin McDonough play or a John Patrick Shanley play or a Susan Laurie Park. You don't know what the fuck you're going to hear. And that makes it exciting. And that's what we try to bring to the show. But we can't bring it to the show every time because of where the fuck we're forced to be and operate in. So if you can, you know, please, thank you for the generosity, but go putting some money in that Patreon pool and becoming a Patreon member helps us do the kind of show we really want to be able to do. And everybody on Rumble, thank you for being on Rumble. And the Rumble rants are super helpful as well, because if we could get Rumble rants to make up for the super chats, at that point we will be even less dependent on this. And that's the goal.
And then we can open the gates of hell.
Right.
I believe also doesn't Rumble take less of like whenever you do like the Rumble rant and
well, now the Rumble rants for till the end of the year, Rumble rants are not taking anything. It's like the promotion where they're giving the creators 100%. I think Rumble rants take 20%, which is less than what YouTube takes. But you know, it's about going over there and it's about signing up. I know it's a pain in the ass. No one likes to create an account. No one likes to create a password. No one likes to fill out payment information. It's a pain in the ass. I get it. It sucks to do. You only have to do it once. Once you do it, your payment information is on file with Rumble just like it is with YouTube. So you can give a Rumble rant just as easy as a super chat. It's super important because it really is.
And then when they start freezing people's bank accounts for their opinions, you will be at the front of the line.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They will just take all those credit card numbers and know who to throw into the gulag.
Well, you'll be in good company. You'll be in good.
Yeah,
company.
I mean,
You'll be in there with us.
I will have to say, I mean, there are some, like, I wish like Rumble's chat functionality worked a little bit better. Like you could get like the live replays.
Yeah,
There's
they
still
have
lots
to
of
up
things
their
that Rumble
game.
needs.
Yeah,
that Rumble really does need to up its game just for those reasons.
Well, they're going to up their game when they get big enough so they can afford to up the game, right? So, like, you know, we like to think of ourselves as revolutionaries here. We can't say we're revolutionaries as long as the chat functionality is good. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes... like sometimes you have to actually put a little work into it by going over there. And look, I'm not saying unsubscribe from the YouTube channel. Obviously, YouTube is amazing. I don't have any intention of ever leaving YouTube. But what we're saying is things being as precarious as they are, it's just impossible to depend on it. It's impossible. And it really sucks. It really sucks because we really love what this platform has given us and made possible for us. It's introduced us to most of you guys. But, you know, we're in the partner program. They don't always treat you like a partner. Partners don't punish each other for vague reasons and then not give them an explanation or not give them any recourse. They don't hold over your head that they can, you know, departner at any, you know, second for any reason that they want.
Some partners do.
What's that?
Some partners do.
Well, yeah, some.
That's true.
But
it's like a dysfunctional relationship.
Exactly. It's a dysfunctional relationship.
That's what he's getting at.
So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is we appreciate all the super chats and we hope you keep them coming. But if you give us 3 per show, give us 2 per show and become a Patreon member. That's all we're saying. But thank you. Anyway,
but baby, I thought you liked my shit post. You won't even tell me what was wrong with it?
Exactly.
Like that.
Here's Dr. OK on Rumble. This is a nice Rumble rant. Thank you. $20. Housing, water, food, utilities, and healthcare should be basic human rights, period. Wait till AI takes over and everyone is homeless. Yeah. But thank you, Dr. OK. We appreciate that very, very much. That's a Rumble rant. And thanks to our awesome producer, Jake. When you give a Rumble rant, we'll put it up on the screen because Jake takes care of that for us. So how about a big round of applause for Jake? SB, $5. Too many communists dismiss this song. Only infrared. Haas openly supports this. Yeah, I know Haas liked this song. We need to expose the fake communists, fake leftists. What's that?
Yeah. What about Tusker? Jesus Christ, we got one sitting right here.
We got one sitting right here. She likes the song. I think he's talking about YouTube communists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Like Haas.
Yeah.
Oh, popular.
Not a real one like you.
Not a real one, right? George H. Thomas, thanks for the $2. Also, listen to Hard Times by Tyler Childers. All right, will do. I'll write that down. Hard Times, Tyler Childers. Beautiful. Thank you. Always love music recommendations. Thank you for that. Russell, let's get the singing bowl out for James Arthur.
Snap.
Thanks for the $50.
Not even a comment. That is generous.
Appreciate that very much. Just a super sticker. Yes, thank you very much for that. Very selfless of you to give us a donation without an opinion. Oh yeah, we can't hear it.
Yeah, that was the lamest singing. No,
dude, I'm trying. Yeah, because dude, we get these DSA people.
There you go. Beautiful.
Got it.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Oh no, I know why. It's because you have the background noise filter off because your air conditioning is on. That's probably why.
Oh, is that why?
I don't know. The first one was entirely too
I don't even have
quiet.
my air conditioning on tonight. There. All right, good. That's all right.
The first one was too quiet, and the second and the third ones were violent.
Second and third ones were violent. I had I had somebody come on Twitter and tell me he was going to teach me how to use the prayer bowl. You're not supposed to strike it. I told him I have it on good authority that was how Gandhi played it.
Right.
that was yeah, he actually people don't know this. He actually wrote Lay Lady Lay. And it was written originally for Singing Bowl.
I had a joke. See, if I had a joke I could make on Rumble, can't make it here. Forget it.
There's a sketch there.
Well, you know, he was fond of sleeping naked with young girls in his bed. That was...
Dave Delarai, thanks for the $8. Come on, people, now smile on your brother. Everybody get together, except for them. They're toxic right now. Oh, but end the war. Yeah, exactly. Good job, Dave Delarai. I like that.
I will have to say, was anyone in the audience at all interested in maybe our like Putin country song that we got a couple of verses out there at the top of that?
I mean, I think that could be a hit.
I think so.
I think that could be the next viral iTunes hit.
Yeah.
Long story short,
from the audience.
Thanks for the $2. Are you guys going to 7 or 10 p.m. JD show? We're going to the 7 p.m. because at the time we got tickets, there was no 10 p.m. He added the later show.
He added a
after
second show.
we already bought the tickets. So yeah,
When
we're
is that? When are you guys going to see
7
Jimmy?
p.m. 25th. 12 days.
Nice.
12 days. We will be there.
Give Jimmy a high five for me.
I am leaving this godforsaken land 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Right.
Nice.
All right. Ruthless Criticism. Thank you for the $5. Looks like Oliver Anthony should start planning a Nintendo 64 giveaway. Yeah, exactly. Out now.
Well, let's see how Hasan reacts.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see how Hasan reacts. I'll tell Hasan this. Thanks for the $5. You won't see anyone trying a PlayStation 5 giveaway in a small town too soon. Yeah, try that in a small town. Yeah, good one. Clever. Robert Penner, thanks for the member chat. Thanks for this segment. Needs to be said. It's embarrassing to pretend lefties exercise selective empathy. Thank you. I agree. Philosophical Thirstworms. Selective empathy. Oh, insurance. Who cares? It's just your livelihood. Just buy another one. This self-employed man is actually an exploiter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No understanding whatsoever. Exactly. Justin Watson, thanks for the $2. Hasan calls poor workers hogs, pure ignorance. Is that what he referred to them as in some streams? I don't watch him at all, at all. I find it just incredibly boring.
Like I heard bad things. I don't watch a lot of politics YouTubers, really.
So is that
Hasan? We're talking about Hasan.
Oh, Hasan. Okay, yeah, both of them. Yeah. I mean, I consider Hasan a gatekeeper. I mean, I think he's part of the ruling class. I think he's a radical recuperator. I don't think there's anything.
I mean, I don't know how anyone would take this guy seriously if he's claiming to be some kind of far leftist and he's living in a multi-million-dollar house. Like, how would you? Why?
Well, I mean, you can like I've said before, you can have class traders. I mean, Engels was a factory owner, and he funded Marx and was incredibly radical as far as that stuff goes. But that means that you actually have to understand the content of what it is that they're putting out. Right. The content that he puts out does not disrupt capital. It does not overthrow the ruling class. it's not a threat, or else it wouldn't be promoted on social media and it wouldn't be shoved into my algorithm over and over and over again, even though years ago, I kind of listened to Hasan whenever I first started becoming like a lefty and I was first kind of developing. But I long ago abandoned him and haven't watched his stuff in years, and he still gets forced into my recommendations. Okay. Then he serves capital. That's all. You might think he's radical. He's not.
Well, no, certainly not.
Well, clearly.
Laugh says, love Tusker. Have her on more. Beautiful. Excellent.
We're trying. We're working out the contracts.
Got to send the microphone down there. Agree with Tusker's point, but isn't organizing riots a way for banning them, citing violence, chaotic action, though anarchy may be needed? Tusker, do you want to respond to that?
So we're saying isn't organizing?
I guess they're saying it's not. I guess they're saying it's not really a riot if it's organized. Like you're banning riots by organizing the riot because it's not a riot anymore.
Well, I think the idea is that you wouldn't have action that wasn't organized. You know, you can have protests, you can have that type of stuff, but they have to be organized, and the elements that are seeking to throw it into chaos must be cut off and controlled. Otherwise, you will end up into a situation where police brutality and the framing of the ruling class will overrun what it is, the message that you were trying to get out, which is essentially a peaceful message that you, as like a working class individual, are using everything that's within your constitutional rights. You are not breaking the law. You are not doing anything like that. You are going there in order to stay within the bounds of the system and in order to advance your cause. And whenever that's organized in such a way that you don't have those anarchic and chaotic elements that go into it, then whenever the police brutality and the suppression of the state occur against your movement, it is very easily identified by the masses. Whenever you have the anarchy and the chaos that come into it, then you have the situation where Fox News can pull up this clip, where this person can pull up this clip. Now there's the divide and conquer type stuff where, oh no, it was this person's fault and this person's fault. And then we argue for months over Kyle Rittenhouse. You know, that's what happens whenever you aren't organized and know what it is exactly the demands that you are advocating for. That's more of what I'm talking about. You know, you have to go with demands and keep control over what's going on.
Right. And that makes good sense to me. I think it's the difference between wanting to be seen and wanting to accomplish something. I think the one is, I'm sure, very emotionally satisfying in the moment, but it's extremely counterproductive to your movement.
And I don't begrudge people that have that emotional reaction.
That's not the question. Right.
You know, like that's not, I don't blame people for having that type of reaction. It's well understood to me why people.
Depending on what it is. I mean, honestly, look, I went out when I was a kid and I fucked shit up, man. I broke car windows and fucked things up and, you know, vandalism and shit. There's a certain thrill to that. There's a certain pleasure to be taken in that. You have to recognize a lot of people are just doing that. There's no politics behind it. It's not always an expression of rage, or very often, I think more often the case. It is for some people, but a lot of people just take advantage of the chaos to have fun or to loot. It's not all political.
Well, and every time you smash a car windshield, you're potentially dooming someone to poverty. Like no shit, of course. And that's exactly the reason why that type of violence, that type of like chaos gets blowback, is because what a lot of people see is they say, oh, that could be my car, that could be my livelihood.
Right. And some poor motherfucker wakes up in the morning with a broken windshield, man. You know, when I was doing that shit, I was 14. You know, like I look at those kinds of things, and yes, you do have people who have legitimate grief and rage and frustration. But I also, man, I mean, it takes one to know one, man. I see a lot of those kids, and I'm like, yeah, I know what you're doing, motherfucker. You're having fun. You're having fun out there.
Steve Wolfbrand, thanks for the $4.99. Keep the lights on. Thank you so much. Courtney, I see a couple of member chats with some questions for me about your membership stuff. I'll hit you back on Facebook regarding those. I don't want to get into that stuff regarding what you personally should do here, but I just want to let you know I saw them, and I'll follow up with you. Did you guys hear the AI Shapiro singing My Way? No, I didn't. I heard about it, but I didn't.
That sounds pretty fun.
Yeah. What's that, Russell?
This isn't. Somebody said I lost it now. Somebody said organize it and do it in a gated community. That's what I've always thought. That's what I've always thought, man. Like if you got that, and I think that's what Tusker means. Not that we're suggesting anything, but yo, man, if a bunch of people showed up in Hasan's neighborhood and very intentionally targeted that class, honestly, man, as long as I don't want anybody to be beat up or any violence like that. But if you went into a neighborhood like that and did property damage, you'd see me probably, in all likelihood, do a very positive video about that. It's not that I'm against that. That's not what's happening. I mean, it's the very famous thing. A lot of times in these riots, people burn down their own neighborhoods. Like, what the fuck? And part of why that never made sense to me? I grew up with an ethos, you don't do fucking crime in your own neighborhood. I never stole a car in my neighborhood. I fucking went to the rich neighborhood. I went over to the better neighborhoods around me to steal. I didn't steal from my neighborhood. So I never understood that. I mean, I thought all the people from the street were clear on this. You don't shit where you eat. You don't do these things where you live. That's why I've never understood why these riots so often take place in the same neighborhood where the people rioting live.
That explains your ideological hold on social democracy. But no, I mean, for me, it's not necessarily about going out and organizing a band of people to protest in like a gated community. My more strategy about it would be organizing and protesting around centers of power. Your local newspaper stand owner is not a center of power. Hasan Piker
exactly
is not a center of power. What is a center of power are the technological platforms that promote and boost him. That is a center of power. He himself is not.
Well, yeah, man. When the rioters went after CNN, I thought that was great. These guys in France who went into BlackRock, I thought that was great. Sure.
Justin Watson, thanks for the $5. Tusker used my favorite term, radical recuperator. Love Gabriel Rockhill. Everyone should watch his interviews with Midwestern Marks. They're great.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah, I haven't seen those.
I asked you guys like a year and a half ago to invite him on as a guest.
Who, Gabriel Rockhill or Midwestern Marks?
Gabriel Rockhill specifically. I think Russell would really like him.
All right, we'll look into it. The Peopled Infinite, thanks for the $5. Sorry for the typo. I guess I mean riots are a good way to scare the ruling class, though, to organize a riot. Well, the thing about look, you organize things as a protest, and then things get crazy from there. And I think that's what Tusker seems to be talking about is you have to have the discipline to when you organize. You have to be disciplined so that it doesn't devolve into a riot, because that ends up discrediting the movement. It's all about discipline and organization, right? Because without discipline and organization, there could be no direction.
Yep.
With no direction, there could be no progress, right? The People to Infinite, thanks for the $2 corporate property. That is anything else? Yeah, no, I got you. Don't worry. Thanks for the extra $2 on that point. Appreciate that. Yeah, I was just reading in the Rumble chat, and I saw our friend Kynan earlier, who's friends with Jose Vega. Posted something on Twitter. He posted a link to Scott Ritter's speech at the rally, and he said something about how this is too hot for YouTube. So I looked it up, and the link was still on YouTube. But apparently, Scott Ritter's show has been taken off entirely.
Has it?
Mm-hmm. Taken off entirely. And I don't think he had any strikes or anything like that, right? Now, he does a couple of different programs. He did that Tour of Duty, and then he had his show, and he still has another channel that has like 25,000 subs. But his show was huge. I mean, he got massive numbers on that show.
Did he?
Yeah. Oh, massive. Like hundreds of thousands of views per episode. Yeah, he did huge numbers on YouTube. Yeah, okay. And they took it down. So this is what I'm talking about.
They just pulled his whole channel.
Yeah, it seems they just pulled it. I'm going to watch a video. He put out a video on it, so I'll see. Because I wasn't sure what that was about earlier today. And then I just kind of confirmed it for sure. So this is what we're talking about, folks. That's what we're talking about, is that, you know, if you want to support the show, you got to go follow us on Rumble. You got to join the Substack. And please, yes, we're going to beg. You have to join the Patreon. That is the best way to do it. You don't have to, obviously, but I'm going to say if you really, like, if you're giving us these super chats, you got to take one of those super chats per show and put it in the monthly pool. Alrighty, I think that's all we got for tonight, right? That's everything in here, everything in there. Jake, you got the rock fins looked out for. There was someone who gave us a rockfin tip last week that we did not get to, who were asking us about the 1619 project. That was on, I believe it was Friday morning, asking us to check out Gerald Horne and asking if he had anything to do with the 1619 project. I'm not sure about that, but I will definitely watch the interview on the Katie Halper show that you pointed us to. So I just wanted to let you know you did read that.
Gerald Horne did not have anything specifically that it's not like he was on the 1619 project. What it was is that there were some of the people that were engaged, that were involved in the 1619 project, used some of his works that to bolster.
Hang on. So what is the point here?
No, it's just somebody asking us a question from Rockfin. That was the tip that we got last week that I did not address it at that point. All righty, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Once again, we will be on RBN tomorrow, and we will be back on this channel on Tuesday night.
I think the thing is, according to Sasha anyway, Gerald Horne is against the 1619 project. Oh, but then somebody else
he doesn't completely define it, but his work was used in some of it, like kind of baseline assumptions and stuff, even though
somebody else here says he supports it. I don't know.
All right. Well,
it's been a minute since I've watched something from him, but what I do know is that some of his work was used in formulating the overall scope of 1619. He wasn't the sole source. He was just one.
I see. Okay.
Well, Tusker, thanks so much for being here this evening. Thank you all very much for being here this evening. We appreciate you all very much. Thank you to Jake in the booth. Thank you to everyone who helped us out with those super chats and Rumble rants, all super helpful. We will see you tomorrow on RBN for the Post-Duopoly show, and back here Tuesday night. Once again, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. No show Wednesday, Tuesday, 8 p.m. back here. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, folks, please do be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.